Jane's room had been broken into by a crybaby ghost before, but the culprit had managed to escape and was never found. Surprisingly, before the crybaby ghost could be apprehended, another evil ghost appeared. Kazo narrowed his eyes and said, "Go, little kid, go up and have a look." On the other hand, backstage, Lucas pulled a chair over and courteously said, "Master, please have a seat." He looked around and saw that the place was bustling with busy people, and only 2 people were attending to them. Lucas expressed his dissatisfaction. These people, they didn't even prepare a decent VIP room for the master. It's quite shameful. Shaven calmly sat down with a profound and indifferent expression. He said, "It's all right. Our visit this time is merely a coincidence. We do not seek worldly riches and fame. Even in a bustling city we should maintain a state of indifference and peace." Lucas shamefully acknowledged, "Master, you've taught me a valuable lesson." Not far away, a middle-aged man in a suit approached hesitantly. He cautiously asked, "Excuse me, are you Shaven?" Shaven nodded lightly. Lucas interjected, "Do you have any connection with my master?" The middle-aged man was pleasantly surprised. "So you really are Shaven?" "Hello, Shaven. My name is Mark Jacobs. I heard that Creations invited you to the opening. I didn't expect it to be true. Wow, I'm incredibly lucky to meet you." Meanwhile, after the Smith family forcefully entered the venue, they walked around and exchanged business cards with various high-ranking celebrities, but hardly anyone paid attention to them. While they were chatting, they noticed Mark Jacobs excitedly asking a priest if he was Shaven. Jack was overjoyed and grabbed Isabella, saying, let's go over there, it's Shaven." Isabella asked, "Shaven? The same person who brought David back from the gate of hell as Mia mentioned last time?" Word had spread that a boss on the brink of bankruptcy had pleaded with Shaven, and miraculously, the company not only overcame the crisis, but also flourished. There was also an elderly woman who had suffered a heart attack, but was miraculously saved by Shaven, pulling her back from the brink of death. Regardless of the request, Shaven seemed to fulfill everyone's desires, but most people couldn't find him. Jack had asked people countless times to find Shaven, but had never caught a glimpse of him. Suppressing their excitement, the 2 immediately stepped forward. This was their chance once again. Within a short period, Shaven found himself surrounded by 7 or 8 people. As the saying goes, the wealthier you are, the more trustworthy you become. They admired Shaven and expressed their respect one after another. Jack squeezed his way through, attentive and enthusiastic. "Shaven. Hello. I've heard about you for a long time." He handed Shaven a business card and asked Isabella to pour tea for him. Isabella hurried over, poured the tea, and obediently held it in front of Shaven, saying sweetly, "Shaven, please have some tea." Isabella chimed in, "Yesterday while chatting with Mia, she mentioned you. She said that David was critically ill in the hospital and beyond saving, but it was you, Shaven, who pulled him back from the depths of hell. We were also sent here today by the Miller family. Mia also mentioned that you live a humble life but reject their gratitude. If we were lucky enough to meet you, she asked us to convey their thanks. Look, it's truly a fortunate encounter," she added. Isabella cleverly combined the idea of representing the Miller family and praising Shaven in her words. Everyone looked at Sarah's family with newfound admiration. Suddenly everyone became enthusiastic, showering Shaven with praise. Shaven was delighted. He found Isabella to be quite astute, so he looked at Sarah, nodded with a mysterious smile and said, "This child is blessed." Isabella was pleasantly surprised. "May I ask why?" Shaven stroked his beard and replied, "When I rescued the heir of the Miller family yesterday, I observed his face and horoscope. I marveled at his incredible fortune and destiny. Such fate is rare in this world. Unexpectedly, I encounter the second one today. Your child's face and destiny align remarkably well with David's. It's truly a match made in heaven. If they can be together, they will soar to great heights," he added. Isabella was stunned. Did this mean that Sarah would have a bright future ahead of her? Was it possible for her to be with the young son of the Miller family? She wondered. Jack was equally elated. If they could secure a marriage alliance with the Miller family, what else could they worry about? He eagerly said, "Thank you, Master. Your words have greatly reassured us. After the ceremony, could we extend an invitation for you to visit our home?" Shaven raised his head, glanced at him and said, "You have a high and broad forehead, indicating great fortune and wealth. However, your brows are rough and your eyes are narrow. Once you become prosperous when you're middle-aged, progress will be challenging and advancement will be slow. Especially recently if things don't go smoothly, you should focus on self-improvement. Jack nodded eagerly. Wow. As expected of Shaven, Jack exclaimed with excitement. He immediately showered Shaven with compliments, praising him to the highest extent. Shaven appeared indifferent, his eyes half closed, making him unpredictable. Everyone was shocked, and Isabella's words weren't enough to explain the situation. Now Shaven's endorsement sealed the deal. At that moment the staff approached with incense, paper money, and a piece of red silk. Sarah pretended innocent and asked, "Master Shaven, what are these?" Shaven casually replied, "These are incense sticks and paper money." Sarah blinked and exclaimed, "Wow, that's amazing. What are they used for?" As a child it was easy to establish a connection. Generally, adults didn't treat children coldly. Sarah did her best to leverage her advantages and seized the opportunity to get to know Shaven. He pointed towards the hosting platform outside and explained, "They're for the opening ceremony." Suddenly he noticed the ceremonial ball, which had been moved 1 foot to the east, had been shifted back. Shaven couldn't help but frown. Lucas immediately questioned, "What's going on? Didn't I ask you to move the ritual ball 1 foot to the east?" The staff member in charge of the site layout approached with an apologetic smile and explained, "It's like this, the higher ones instructed us to move it." Lucas expressed his displeasure. "I don't care who these higher ones are. Since they invited my master, they should respect his arrangements. It's for their good. Do these people who ordered the relocation of the ritual ball even understand the reason behind my master's setup?" Just as he finished speaking, Albert's cold voice cut in, "I ordered the move. Do you have any objections?" Upon seeing Albert, Lucas abruptly stopped speaking. Observing the scene in the background, Kate couldn't help but freeze, her face reflecting astonishment. She saw the pale female ghost repeatedly leaping on the heads of Shaven and Sarah. It was a scene reminiscent of a dog picking a place to relieve itself. The thought of it reminded Kate of the promise Lucas had made the day before if Kate were to succeed. She asked, "Lucas, did you actually eat it when you went back?" Lucas remained silent. Kate's curiosity persisted. "Lucas, could you swallow the trash? Did it reach your stomach?" He still remained silent. "Yesterday," Kate asked Roy, "and he said that 10 pounds of trash was probably a lot. If Lucas actually managed to finish eating it, then he was truly incredible." Kate gazed at Lucas with admiration in her eyes. Lucas exclaimed, "Damn it." Shaven's expression turned ugly. It was that little troublemaker again. Wherever he went, this little girl followed him. Shaven's face grew cold as he chastised, "It's indecent to use such vulgar language at such a young age." Kate nodded, saying, "Master Liar, did you eat it too?" Shaven remained silent. Kazo couldn't help but snort. Why was his little apprentice so adorable? Sometimes he wondered if she did it intentionally. Kazo gazed at the mischievous ghost leaping repeatedly on Shaven and Sarah's heads. Ah, such a hypocrite. That was definitely the case. However, there were too many people present now, making it difficult to handle. "For now, let's ignore her," Kazo whispered to Kate. "Tonight, Master will take you out." Kate nodded in agreement, saying, "Okay." Shaven's face turned as pale as a liver. How dare she call me a liar? He flicked the Buddha dust and said with a cold voice, "It's disrespectful to the heavens and the earth, showing no regard for things. I can see that you are truly an..." People within the community had indeed inquired about the return of the young daughter of the Crook family. All of them started whispering about Kate. Kate's mother passed away when she was 2 years old. Additionally, when she was 8, the child in her stepmother's womb had a miscarriage. Moreover, her father faced bankruptcy and incarceration. Upon returning to Crook's house, news reached that Harry and Jennifer had gotten divorced. Let's not discuss the truth at this moment, but overall, Kate had been resisting her father, mother, and relatives. Kate's smiling face gradually faded. Albert comforted Kate with a gentle voice, patting her. "That's right, Kate is Carolina's daughter. She is Kate Crook." His face turned icy and he coldly stated, "Who is responsible for organizing the event? Get rid of these 2 liars immediately." The staff trembled in fear from Albert's frigid demeanor and didn't dare to utter a word. Albert's assistant Daisy approached and gestured to invite them, saying, "Please." Shaven appeared stubborn and unyielding, speaking indifferently. Lucas, pack your things. We don't need to save someone who doesn't appreciate it. He was extremely angered, feeling that the Crook family had no understanding of what was right and wrong. Lucas snorted. We came here to assist you, disregarding past suspicions, and you still disrespect my master like this. If you encounter any troubles in the future, don't come running to my master for help. Lucas was young and full of energy, not afraid to resent Albert. Albert sneered and ordered his assistant to call the police. Shaven's face instantly froze. Everyone hurriedly tried to persuade Albert, saying, Oh, Mr. Crook, please don't be angry. Shaven's disciple may be a bit headstrong, but he has no ill intentions. Someone from the crowd said, That's right, Shaven is a good person. Although he isn't talkative, he willingly answered all our previous questions. One of Albert's employees said, Boss, there's no need to call the police. It's all a misunderstanding. Oh, everyone, let's take a step back and resolve this peacefully. Albert remained unmoved. Shaven observed Albert's eyes and couldn't help but feel startled. He grasped the whisk, put on a detached expression forcefully, and stated, I don't wish to argue with anyone. Lucas, let's go. However, at that moment Sarah suddenly grabbed his sleeve. Sarah had a sincere expression, pleading, Master, please don't be angry. Kate is still young and doesn't understand. Kate didn't mean to upset you, Master. Then she anxiously looked at Kate and said, Kate, Shaven is very powerful. You made a mistake. Please apologize to the Master. Some people couldn't help but think that Sarah was truly kind and deserving of the good fate Shaven had mentioned. Although Shaven didn't say anything outright, he secretly wanted to push Sarah away. What were they waiting for to reveal themselves? With those words, the malevolent ghost, who had been jumping around incessantly, finally landed on Sarah's head. Sarah felt she had gained attention once again and became even more determined, saying, Kate, can you apologize to Shaven, please? Kate turned her head and replied, No. Albert also sneered. Who are you? What authority do you have to ask my Kate to apologize? Sarah was taken aback, then bit her lip, looking aggrieved. She appeared very sorrowful and on the verge of tears. Uneasily, she let go of Shaven's sleeve. I'm sorry, she apologized while sobbing. Uncle Albert, I only want everyone to stop arguing, but I am stupid. I'm so sorry for making you angry. Albert felt bored. He couldn't comprehend how such a young child could develop such hypocrisy. Isabella quickly laughed and said, Mr. Crook, please forgive Sarah. She is kind-hearted, but she's an innocent child who doesn't understand what she's saying. Please forgive her. Everyone continued to argue, unwilling to offend Albert but also reluctant to miss out on Shaven's presence. Where was Shaven? He desperately wanted to slip away, but kind-hearted individuals kept stopping him, frustrating him to no end. Kazo raised an eyebrow, his eyes shifting with a tinge of malice. Kate, ask Shaven if he's so powerful. Can he predict his own fate? Kate obediently complied. Shaven, if you're so powerful, can you predict your own destiny? Shaven frowned. Lucas immediately interjected. Doctors can't heal themselves and fortune-tellers can't see their own fate. Don't you understand that? Kate shook her head and replied, I don't understand. I'm just a child. Lucas remained silent. If the master can't figure it out, does that mean he's not that powerful? Kate asked again. She pouted and muttered, He's really useless. Lucas stayed silent. This kid was too bothersome. Do you understand now? Lucas asked coldly. Kate tilted her head and said, I understand. Lucas was momentarily speechless. Shaven said coldly, All right, Lucas, don't pay attention to children, I'm very busy, let's go. Everyone felt a bit puzzled. Why did Master Shaven seem so eager to leave? One of the people present at the venue said, Shaven, do the divination. That's right, there are always people who doubt Shaven's power. Let's do the divinations and show them. Feeling everyone's gaze, Shaven had no choice. He reluctantly bit the bullet, pinched his fingers, and after a while said, I might encounter some minor troubles along the way, but I'm not afraid of challenges, so there's no serious issue. Kate shook her head. Master, you made a mistake. Kate will do it for you. After speaking, she rummaged through her small bag and pulled out an old turtle. As the old turtle emerged, it looked around, craning its neck in confusion. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. Kate climbed down from Albert's arms, squatted on the ground and said, Master, watch me. With a flick, she rolled the old turtle forward. The turtle flipped its legs, rolled in a circle, bumped into the corner wall, and bounced back, coming to a stop at Kate's feet. Kate gazed at the old turtle with a serious expression on her face. Yeah, that's it. Everyone remained silent. Someone from the crowd commented, Wait, she just rolled a turtle. Why was it so significant? If telling fortunes was that easy, they could all be masters. Ha, did you figure anything out? Lucas sneered. Kate snapped her fingers. The master will have great luck. You'll never have to worry about food for the rest of your life. Lucas isn't so lucky. He'll keep eating shit for 10 years, she added. Shaven was stunned. He thought, what on earth was she saying? Kate continued. The master cheated a lot of money and later he'll be caught by the police and won't be able to get away. Only then did everyone realize what kind of food she had been referring to. Lucas was furious. What nonsense are you talking about? He yelled. His master was an occultist master, respected by everyone. Even the leaders at the bureau had invited him. There was no way he could be caught. Just as he spoke, several police officers entered through the side door and headed straight for Shaven. One of them questioned, Who's Shaven? Instinctively, everyone pointed at Shaven. Lucas quickly said, Officer, this is my master. I was at the bureau with you last month. Before he finished speaking, the leading police officer sneered, Take him away. Lucas was taken aback and grew anxious. Why are you arresting my master? Don't you know who my master is? Where's your bureau chief? Tell your bureau chief to come here, he ordered. Everyone stared at Lucas, dumbfounded. Was this person too arrogant or simply ignorant of the world? They had the audacity to yell in public, demanding the director to come out. Wasn't this a death wish? As expected, the police officer sneered. Your master, Shaven Burns, graduated from NYU. After graduation, he worked in an electronics factory for 5 years and was sentenced to 2 years for theft. He swindled the money meant for saving lives. He presented the documents while speaking. If you dare to bluff and deceive here, it's useless to call anyone. Take him away. Everyone stood there stunned. If what the police officer said was true, it meant that Shaven was nothing but a fraud. They had been praising and flattering such a fraud just moments ago, feeling like utter fools. The way everyone looked at Shaven changed. Shaven grew furious and impatient. He thought to himself, That is my past, and now I'm an occultist, so it is different. Everything I worked so hard for is ruined by Kate. He gritted his teeth. At this point, he could only put on a forced display of arrogance. I dispute the crimes you've listed. This is slander, and I demand to hire a lawyer, he uttered. Lucas added, That's right, you must have made a mistake. Just yesterday, my master saved the young child of the Miller family. If you don't believe me, call Oliver and ask. He tried to provoke the police officer by mentioning the prestigious Miller family. At that moment, a cold voice rang out. It's a good thing he didn't save him. Oliver emerged from the crowd leading David. He spoke coldly. Instead, I should ask Shaven how he swindled my mother's bank card yesterday. Shaven's heart sank. Oliver, acting personally and exposing him, left no room for argument. Shaven pursed his lips, his face turning cold, displaying a stubborn detachment. He had no other option. The police officers handcuffed Shaven directly and took him away. Everyone gazed at the disgraced Shaven, their emotions too complex for words. They looked at Sarah's parents, a hint of resentment rising within them. From the very beginning, it was because they had sworn that Shaven saved the young son of the Miller family that they dared to heap so much praise upon him. It turned out to be a joke. Sarah's parents also felt deeply embarrassed. Upon seeing Oliver approaching, they hurriedly greeted him. Oliver, you're here too. Oliver cast them a cold gaze. He addressed Albert. I apologize. My mother can be quite confused. Whenever someone makes her happy, she tends to pass the invitation letter to someone irrelevant. Albert replied, It's okay. I had someone escort them out, but I'm not sure how they managed to stay. This conversation was like a slap on the faces of the Smith family. A collective realization spread through the crowd. They had suspected all along the Smith family's actions had been based on lies and manipulation. I knew it. How could they collude with fraud and deceive everyone? It was all a lie. A man sneered. The Smith family is nothing but insignificant. They don't even deserve to be called a family. How did they manage to attend this event? Added another man. It's despicable. They shamelessly lied to the elderly to secure an invitation, claiming that Mr. Oliver had entrusted them to attend the ceremony. They have no shame, blurted a woman. Ha ha, just a moment ago they were singing praises with the fraud, claiming that their child and the Miller family's young master were a match made in heaven, laughed the first man. It's unbelievable. If they could catch the Miller family's attention, they would exploit it to their advantage, hissed another woman. Jack and Isabella flushed with embarrassment as they felt the weight of judgment from those around them. Sarah's parents felt a surge of embarrassment, their cheeks reddening in response. Their initial intention had been to expand their social circle and enhance their reputation. Never had they anticipated such humiliation at the hands of Oliver. Awkwardly, Jack responded, "We are unaware." Disregarding their feeble response, Albert, his presence exuding intimidation, coldly inquired, "Who was responsible for a reception earlier?" The reception staff trembled and faltered. They forced their way in, claiming to have been entrusted by the Miller family. "I will go and remove them." Hastily, the staff summoned security guards who promptly escorted the Smith family out, leaving Sarah's family in disarray. Sarah found herself once again rejected, her tears uncontrollable. She couldn't accept it. Hadn't Shaven assured her that her future would be different? She was even supposed to be matched with the young master of the Miller family. How had she been discarded so abruptly? It was an utterly humiliating experience. Tears streamed down her face as Sarah anxiously scanned the surroundings, turning to David, who had silently stood behind Oliver. But David, his expression icy, didn't spare her a glance. Instead, his gaze was fixed on Kate. Sarah broke into even louder sobs. Finally, the troublemakers were expelled. Kate stared at Sarah, wondering about the thoughts running through her mind. Albert inquired, "Kate, what's wrong?" She shook her head and replied, "It's nothing." Meanwhile, the staff stammered, "Mr. Crook, what about the ribbon-cutting ceremony?" They faced a significant predicament. This incident had already caused them to miss the auspicious time, which was considered highly unlucky for events like a company going public or a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Not only had two imposters appeared, but they had also missed the auspicious time. Even if the company went public in the future, a lingering worry would remain. For some superstitious individuals, it would be even more inauspicious. Albert frowned, preparing to speak. Kate picked up her toy turtle, patted it, and placed it in her bag. "Don't worry, I will figure it out," she voiced. Kate began calculating with her fingers, imitating Keizo's mannerisms, attempting to appear logical despite her young age. On the 18th of October at 10 o'clock, an auspicious light will descend from the sky. "It's the perfect time," she uttered. Everyone was left speechless. What on earth? This couldn't be a joke. After all, Kate was just a child. She probably didn't understand. "Boss, what should we do?" the staff asked Albert, feeling immensely embarrassed. Albert lifted Kate and confidently declared, "Then it shall be on the 18th. He had faith in Kate. Even if no auspicious light descended from the sky, Kate and their family had the final say. For a moment, no one knew how to react. The Crook family's immense adoration for Kate was said to be true. They entrusted her to make such a significant decision. However, deep down, no one truly believed that an auspicious light would appear at 10 o'clock as Kate claimed. As the ceremony was about to commence, everyone took their seats under the guidance of the waitstaff. Kate sipped water from her water bottle. David approached them as well. Dressed in a tiny suit and bow tie, despite his young age, he appeared serious and composed. Calmly surveying the surroundings, he noticed Kate seated in the front row, drinking water with her cheeks puffed out. It made him want to reach out and pinch her face. Oliver led David towards Kate. As they drew closer, David's expression grew increasingly tense. When Kate looked up and saw David's pursed lips and somber expression, she happily waved her hands and exclaimed, "Hey, little brother, come sit here." She patted the seat beside her, inviting David. He didn't glance sideways and hummed. Nevertheless, he made his way toward Kate with awkward movements. Oliver wondered, why was his son walking in such a peculiar manner? He hadn't noticed this issue in the morning. Could it be some kind of after effect? Kate observed David with curiosity. David walks funny, and even when he sits down, he remains upright and stares straight ahead, Kate thought, shaking her head. "Hey, You've grown up so quickly, Kate exclaimed. Lately people had been commenting on her maturity for her age, and she decided to make the most of it. David remained silent, lips pursed. Suddenly he extended his hands and said, "Here." Kate glanced down and noticed a fruit candy resting in his palm. The transparent wrapper revealed a pink strawberry-flavored candy inside. "Is it for me?" Kate asked. David nodded in agreement. After contemplating for a moment, she inquired again, "There's only one. Is it just for me?" She wanted to confirm since they were both children, and one candy wouldn't be sufficient. What if David suddenly cried after she ate it? David turned his head, displaying an arrogant expression. Nonchalantly he replied, "No, I found it at the door." Kate understood that David wouldn't eat it himself. She swiftly reached out and snatched the candy, seizing the opportunity while the adults were engrossed in conversation. She unwrapped the candy swiftly and popped it into her mouth, sitting upright with her hands on her knees, staring straight ahead without squinting. David remained silent, looking down at his palm. When Kate took the candy, her fingers brushed against his hand, feeling like a turtle scratching its shell. "Is it delicious?" he asked. Kate nodded, her mouth still filled with candy. "It's delicious, don't talk." She didn't want to get caught by Albert, as he wouldn't give her any more food if he found out. David didn't look at her, remained silent for a moment, and couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Are you scared of your uncle?" Kate bit into the fruit candy and mumbled, "It's not that I'm scared, it's just that I have a broken tooth, and Uncle and Grandma won't let me eat candy." "Then don't eat it," David responded. He regretted giving her the candy if he had known about her broken tooth. Kate covered her mouth quickly, muffling her words. "Once it's in Kate's mouth, there's no turning back," she said. David's mouth twitched at the corner and he responded, "No need to turn back." "Exactly. Once it's in my mouth, there's no reason to spit it out. This is so sweet and I love candy the most," she added. She had no intention of spitting it out. If someone discovered it, she would have no choice but to swallow it. David narrowed his eyes at her. Kate's face had a slight puffiness from the candy, resembling a rabbit munching on carrots. With the sugar coating her mouth, her little lips puckered, revealing chubby cheeks on both sides, making her look adorable. David quickly averted his gaze. "Thank you for that day," he stated, keeping his gaze fixed straight ahead with a small smile on his face. Kate, engrossed in devouring her candy, relished the sweet taste filling her mouth. The unexpected gratitude from David momentarily caught her off guard. "What?" she asked. David didn't elaborate further. On the stage, the host continued speaking. Feeling bored, David glanced at Kate once again. She had finished eating the candy and was now licking her lips. Her desire for more was evident. David asked, "Why do you have such a strong liking for sweets?" Kate picked up her water bottle and took a sip of water before answering, "Because sugar is sweet. Life can be bitter, but sugar brings sweetness in everything." David was surprised. He couldn't believe such words came from Kate's mouth. Her innocent face blinked up at him. "In the past, my mom used to scold me and my dad wouldn't listen to my explanations. It made me really sad. Then one day, I accidentally found a candy under the sofa. I was very hungry at the time, and the memory of the candy's sweetness came rushing back," she explained. "That kind of sadness must have felt bitter, right?" David questioned. She agreed. He remained silent, but he kept Kate's words in his heart. He remembered that she loved candy. On the stage, the host's speech continued. Everyone eagerly counted down the time, intentionally delaying the ribbon cutting until 10 o'clock. Inside the auditorium, those who were aware of the backstage incident couldn't help but check the time. It was 10 o'clock. They were curious to see if anything auspicious would happen at that specific time. People gossiped, "These kids are just playing around. The Crook family spoils this child beyond imagination. Such nonsense." Mr. Jacobs gossiped, "If a master says so, I might believe it. But a child? If some auspicious light appears later, I'll shave my head bald." Some man from the crowd said and laughed, "Mr. Jacobs, you're exaggerating." Whispers filled the room, followed by laughter. Clearly, no one took Kate's words seriously. They thought she was acting like a little magician, perhaps influenced by a TV show she had watched. Finally, as the time drew near, everyone fell silent and fixed their gaze on the stage. In these days of blooming spring and joyous festivities, Let's warmly welcome Mr. Baker and Albert from the Crook Group to the stage for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Please give them a round of applause." Upon hearing this, Kate clapped her hands excitedly. Albert adjusted his attire and gently patted Kate's head. "Stay here with Daisy and behave. Don't wander off." Kate vigorously nodded. "Okay." To prove that she wouldn't run around, Kate turned around and grabbed the finger of Albert's assistant, Daisy. Daisy's fingers were suddenly caught by a small hand, surprising her momentarily. She looked at the cute little girl in front of her, and her heart couldn't help but soften. "President Crook, don't worry," Daisy assured. Albert nodded and walked onto the stage. After delivering a few words, the key figures in charge stood in front of the ribbon, holding the golden scissors. With a salute, everyone applauded enthusiastically as the golden scissors clicked and cut the red ribbon. At that moment, the sunlight cleverly illuminated the stage through the colorful glass on the roof. The stage, centered around the ceremonial ball, was bathed in a colorful, auspicious light. Albert paused, subconsciously checking the time. It was exactly 10 o'clock. A wave of astonishment and disbelief swept through the audience as they beheld the mesmerizing illumination on the stage, prompting them to cast bewildered glances in Kate's direction. People exclaimed, "That really is an auspicious light." The person who had claimed he would shave his head muttered to himself, "Impossible. It must have been planned in advance." The person beside him chimed in, "Exactly, it's too mysterious. It must have been artificially created." However, when their gazes ascended toward the source of the auspicious light, they discovered no indications of deliberate arrangement. Instead, it was simply the sunlight dispersing through the vibrant glass. In other words, it was a genuine coincidence. A sense of puzzlement washed over everyone's faces, leaving them with vacant expressions. Kate playfully pinched the person responsible for doubting the auspicious times. A sense of embarrassment tinged his face. A voice exclaimed, "Unbelievable. How could it be so precise if it's merely a coincidence? It happened exactly at 10 o'clock. It can't be attributed to pure chance." He continued to say, "I find it hard to believe. If it were predicted by Master Shaven, I would consider it. But how could the young daughter of the Crook family know? It must be nonsensical rambling, just sheer luck. Otherwise it's too absurd." Amidst a sea of amazed and skeptical gazes, Kate maintained her composure, sitting serenely and undisturbed by the unfolding spectacle. With unwavering patience, she endured the culmination of the ribbon-cutting ceremony, patiently waiting for the host to deliver a speech filled with gratitude, which prompted the entire audience to rise from their seats. Albert and a group of executives from Creations found themselves encircled by eager individuals, creating a challenging situation that hindered their mobility. As a prominent figure, Oliver naturally drew the attention of the crowd, and everyone seized the opportunity to engage with him. Oliver whispered to David, "Take care of Kate." David retained his stoic composure, offering a mere nod as a reply. While he had displayed remarkable attentiveness during his conversation with Kate, his demeanor appeared quite dismissive when interacting with his father. Oliver was left speechless. Kate tugged at Daisy and exclaimed cheerfully, "Come on, Daisy. I want to have some cake." Observing Kate's growing excitement over the cake, David calmly inserted a hand into his pocket and discreetly trailed behind her. Kate's eyes sparkled with delight as she caught sight of the mouth-watering delicacies adorning the refreshment table. She stood on her tiptoes, attempting to reach the tempting treats, but her efforts fell short. Just as Daisy was about to lend a helping hand, a small hand emerged beside him. David reached out, retrieved the cake, and handed it to her, saying, "Here." Kate gratefully replied, "Thank you, David," and carefully settled down on the sofa next to the cake, taking a bite. "It's so sweet, sweeter than first love," Kate exclaimed, her face displaying a knowing expression. Daisy burst into laughter and asked, "Do you even know what first love is?" As she enjoyed her cake, Kate mumbled, "When I went to a park before in New York, an old man selling watermelons said so." She imitated the old man and waved her hand, saying, "Come on, fresh watermelon, sweeter than first love." Daisy was momentarily taken aback, but couldn't help but laugh. Seeing Kate's round and chubby face, she couldn't resist the urge to pinch it. She said, "So adorable." David turned his face away and thought, "She is indeed cute, but that's just it. She's cute." he thought to himself, but couldn't help glancing around to find where there was a strawberry cake. Kate ate happily, and while eating she tilted her head to look at Daisy and suddenly asked, "Why are you called Daisy? Were you named Daisy when you were born?" Daisy laughed so hard she couldn't find her voice. She wiped the cream off Kate's mouth with a wet tissue, just like a mother would, and said, "I'm named after the beautiful flower called Daisy." Kate suddenly realized, "Oh, a flower." When David thought she understood, Kate asked again, "What is a daisy flower?" David remained silent. Daisy couldn't help but laugh and said, "You'll learn about it when you go to school, Kate." Kate nodded, understandingly. Kate quietly noted down the words, "go to school." She couldn't resist the thought that David possessed a wealth of knowledge due to his education, leading her to believe that attending school must be an incredible experience. Kate raised her hand and said, "Then I want to go to school too." Daisy replied, "All right. We'll discuss it with your uncle later, okay?" Kate nodded. "Yeah." David maintained his silence, attentively watching as Kate consumed the miniature cake held in her hand. Without hesitation, he swiftly made his way to the tea table, determined to achieve a specific objective, and returned promptly with 2 additional petite cakes. The small cakes were only half the size of Kate's palm. Kate ate 5 of them in one go, then patted her little belly and expressed her unsatisfied desire, saying, "It's delicious. From now on, I'll go to work with my uncle every day." Daisy joked, "Didn't you just say you are going to school?" Kate was taken aback for a moment, her face filled with confusion. "Yes, I have to go to school. How can I go to work?" Kate furrowed her brows and said seriously, "Then I will go to school from Monday to Friday and will go to work on Saturday and Sunday." Daisy couldn't help but laugh. "You really are dedicated." Several people chatted happily. Upon seeing Kate, some ladies and socialites who were following them gathered around and teased her. "Kate, why are you here alone? You love eating cakes." One of the celebrities wearing a silver-gray mermaid dress approached and asked, holding her throat, "Hi, what's your name?" Kate replied, "My name is Kate. It means a flower." The lady was surprised. A flower? The lady gazed at her with confusion, fully aware that the name Kate did not carry the meaning of a flower. Kate immediately turned her head and said, "It's because I am beautiful like Daisy, got it? Miss, didn't you go to school? Is that why you don't know that my name means a flower?" David looked at Kate and thought, how can someone be this foolish yet confident? He said to Kate, "Although having a name that means a flower is quite common, I don't think your name means flower. I'm sure of that." Kate nodded as she somehow understood what he was trying to say. On the other hand, Kate looked at the lady wearing the mermaid dress in front of her with sympathy, as she still didn't get what David meant. She looked at the lady and said, "It's so pitiful that you have not gone to school." The famous lady was astonished, covered her mouth and smiled, saying, "Kate, you are so adorable." But Kate couldn't help asking, "Auntie, do you have something stuck in your throat? Did you eat something and not swallow it?" The famous lady was taken aback. "What?" she asked. "Auntie, your voice sounds strange and unpleasant. Are you sick? That's why you can't speak properly?" Kate answered. She looked serious. She was genuinely concerned about the lady's health and not trying to insult her. The celebrity looked a little embarrassed. The people around secretly breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that Kate was right. This famous lady was Emma, and she spoke in an affected tone, whining and posing. It was said that she was a celebrity, but no one knew how she managed to enter the circle of celebrities. Emma herself was just a minor eighth-line actress, the first newcomer signed by Creations, the biggest entertainment company in the USA. Therefore, the noble ladies in the real celebrity circle looked down on Emma. They even found her contrived and annoying when she spoke. At that moment, Paul, dressed in a silver-gray suit, approached. His hair was slicked back, and he still wore his signature gold-rimmed glasses. The satin shirt he wore had 2 unbuttoned buttons on the neckline, giving off a rebellious vibe. He paired it with a shiny silver-gray jacket. He looked like a tough guy. Kate quickly stuffed the remaining bite of cake into her mouth. Paul was speechless, raised an eyebrow and chuckled softly. "Hey, what is our Kate stealing?" Kate vigorously shook her head. "I didn't steal anything." Paul extended his finger and wiped the cream from Kate's lips, saying, "Yeah, you're so mischievous. It's written all over your face." Kate's eyes widened. She thought, "Oops, I made a mistake. In the future, if I steal food, I have to make sure to wipe my mouth. On the side, Emma remained composed and discreetly moved closer to Paul. She was also wearing a silver-gray outfit similar to Paul's, so much so that it looked as if she and Paul were a couple. Emma couldn't help sneaking a peek at Paul, her heart pounding. The playboy of the film industry, Paul, had a personality that matched his appearance, tough and rebellious. It was hard not to be attracted to him. And Emma had just found out that Paul was one of the 8 heirs of the Crook family. The Crook family. They were a real powerhouse. If only she could marry into that family. Emma's eyes glistened with anticipation as she whispered, "Mr. Crook, it seems that Kate has quite the affinity for cakes. Should I fetch her a couple more?" Paul arched an eyebrow and responded nonchalantly, "No need. If Kate ate any more, her stomach might burst." Paul picked up Kate, took a wet wipe from Daisy, and casually wiped away the remnants of cake from her mouth. "Little troublemaker, you should learn to clean up after your cake heists, you know?" Paul half smiled and playfully flicked Kate's nose. Kate immediately covered her nose and replied, "Got it." Witnessing Paul's doting behavior, Emma quickly expressed her fondness for Kate. "You are absolutely adorable. Come here and give me a hug." Emma extended her hand toward Kate and offered a sweet smile. Kate furrowed her brow and earnestly asked again, "Auntie, do you have something stuck in your throat?" The onlookers were momentarily stunned, but quickly stifled their laughter upon seeing Kate's serious expression. Emma's face froze for a moment and she forced a smile, saying, "Oh, Kate, you're such a funny kid." Kate nodded in understanding. "So that means you have a stuck slipper?" Emma couldn't utter a word. David, with an expressionless face, interjected, "That's called acting." Paul smirked, casting a glance at David, and said to Kate, "See, got it?" His voice possessed a rugged charm, captivating in its own unique way. Kate vigorously nodded, exclaiming, "Yeah, I got it." Emma was on the verge of tears, trying weakly to explain, "That's not." She trailed off, but Paul paid no attention and left with Kate in his arms. The surrounding people sneered, "Oh, that kid is quite something. What nonsense was she spouting?" One of them continued, "David is right. I always found Emma repulsive." The other one said, pretending to be innocent with that contrived voice and childish behavior, "Such a phony." Emma shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "That's not it at all. My voice has always been like this." As everyone departed, they spared no kind glances for Emma. If she hadn't been a star under Creations, she wouldn't have had the privilege to be there. Originally, they had come to inquire about Kate, engaging in idle chatter about her well-being, her prospects, and whether she was leading a good life. But in the end, nothing was said, and Emma had ruined it all. Paul led Kate to the garden behind the venue, seeking solace from the crowded and noisy surroundings. After walking for a while, she sensed something weird and turned around to find David silently trailing behind them. Paul raised an eyebrow, questioning, "What are you doing here with us?" David's expression tightened as he replied, "My father asked me to look after her." Paul narrowed her eyes, then turned and continued walking ahead. "I see," he added. The young son of the Miller family wasn't typically so compliant. Although they hadn't interacted much, Paul had heard that David's personality mirrored his father's, if not colder. No one could make him do something he didn't want to do. So why was he willingly following Kate? It was peculiar. He must have been sheltered since childhood. Paul settled on a bench with Kate sitting beside him. He stared at Kate and asked, "Kate, how did you know there would be an auspicious moment at 10 o'clock?" Though he hadn't been backstage, he had later inquired with one of the staff members and learned about the cause and effect. Who would have thought he would be so amazed upon witnessing that auspicious moment? Kate rummaged through her bag, peering at the old turtle inside. She replied, "I didn't calculate." Curiosity piqued. Paul reclined on the chair, supporting his face with one hand. "Then how did you know?" he questioned. Kate promptly retrieved the old turtle and said, "This is how." After speaking, she placed the turtle on the ground and turned away. Paul was dumbfounded. Had this little cutie actually brought the old turtle from home? And she put it in her bag. Wouldn't it suffocate? Paul gazed at Kate's serious expression and couldn't help but be amused. What did Kate figure out? Kate raised her index finger and solemnly declared, "Uncle Paul, you will have good luck, but be cautious when you go out." Paul didn't say anything. After Kate finished, she pinched her fingers again. Uncle Paul will fall into the clutches of the little monster. Paul was taken aback. What little monster? He asked. You, the little monster, Kate replied. She chuckled softly, the smile spreading as her shoulders shrugged slightly. Just talking nonsense. The peach blossom tribulation, huh? That would be something. A lump of bird droppings falling from the sky and turning his head into blossoms? Peach blossoms? Impossible, she blabbered. Paul raised his hand, untied Kate's messy hair, and nonchalantly remarked, That sounds like quite the trouble. Kate nodded. Yeah, it's a big trouble. Uncle Paul will be in deep trouble. Paul was blank. The more she spoke, the more absurd it sounded. Paul's slender fingers deftly braided Kate's hair, effortlessly transforming it from a mess into two adorable fishtail braids. They weren't perfectly neat like when using a comb, but they had a natural charm. It looks lovely, Paul complimented. Thank you, Uncle Paul. Kate giggled. David discreetly glanced at Kate, finding her eyes curved like crescent moons as she grinned, revealing shallow dimples on both sides. She was truly adorable. David withdrew his gaze and focused on his toes. Paul was about to say something when she heard a clicking sound. Being camera-savvy, she quickly spotted a reporter lurking in the shadows. The reporter's eyes lit up like light bulbs, brimming with excitement. A man who appeared somewhat sinister, completely absorbed in braiding a little girl's hair. This image was too striking. Paul averted his gaze, not particularly bothered. The beloved little princess of the Crook family was destined to be known by the world. It was bound to create a sensation. They wanted Kate to be the envy of everyone. Their little princess would always be their princess. Observing Paul's nonchalance, the reporters grew even more ecstatic. Mr. Crook, look over here, he called. He continued to ask, Is this your little niece? She's absolutely adorable. He looked at Kate and said, Miss Kate, give us a smile. Paul placed her hands on Kate's shoulders and casually smiled at the cameras. He had always despised being photographed, but if it was with the little girl, he could tolerate it. Just as Paul was lost in his thoughts, he suddenly caught sight of a silver-gray figure approaching the entrance of the garden. Emma's gaze met Paul's, and her eyes immediately lit up. For some reason, Paul suddenly recalled what Kate had said just moments ago. His heart sank inexplicably. Paul remained silent, observing Emma as she approached with a blank expression. Emma wore a silver-gray dress, matching the color of his tuxedo perfectly. Emma stood beside Paul, alongside Kate, creating a sense of a small family. The reporter possessed a keen sense of curiosity and hastily snapped photos. If these photos were published, they would generate gossip for the following week. Emma lifted her head, tears glistening on her face, her expression sincere. Mr. Paul, did I say something wrong earlier? A faint smile appeared at the corner of Paul's lips, but his eyes remained devoid of joy. Hasn't anyone told you that you're annoying? He glanced downward, his eyes tinged with sarcasm. Emma's face froze once again. She bit her lip. Is it because of my voice? Mr. Paul, this is genuinely my natural voice. If you don't like it, I can start training to sound more alluring from today onwards. Paul sneered noncommittally. Kate blinked, observing the situation, and pondered quietly. She leaned against Paul's shoulder and asked David in a low voice, David, isn't this what they call lingering affection? Yes, David replied. Kate nodded, learning from the experience. She said to Emma, Auntie, you're really persistent. She applied what she had learned. Emma bit her lip and retorted, Kate, you shouldn't say such things. In truth, Emma knew that she was despised, but her reason for lingering here was to create hype. The reporter continued snapping photos, and she held on for a little longer. Once the photos were published, with the added scandal of Paul from the past, she would undoubtedly gain popularity rapidly. As long as there were discussions and attention, she didn't care about anything, especially considering that Paul was the subject of the scandal. She was willing. Even if she had to tie herself to the daughter of the Crook family, she wouldn't hesitate. However, in the next second, Paul's voice turned cold. If you publish any of the photos you took today, Paul cast a brief, sweeping glance around, maintaining a smile on the surface as he adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses. The reporter suddenly felt a chill run down his spine and hurriedly responded, "Understood, Mr. Crook. Mr. Crook, is it acceptable to publish the photo of you and Miss Kate from earlier?" He persisted with the inquiry. Paul smiled amiably. "That one is fine." The reporter suddenly exchanged looks of curiosity as he directed his gaze toward Emma. While it was true that Paul had never been involved in any affairs with female celebrities, he had never refused to be photographed with them on red carpets or during press conferences and other events. In fact, he often had his arm around female celebrities openly. Now how much Emma was detested became evident. The camera shutters clicked and the reporter's eyes sparkled with amusement. Emma felt as though her face was being scraped against the ground. It hurt so much. Without waiting for Emma to say anything, Paul turned around and left once more. Initially, he had not intended to let it go, but now he had lost interest. Paul raised his hand and ruffled David's hair, saying, "Let's go." David's neatly combed hair instantly became disheveled. With a displeased expression, he followed behind. Kate lay on Paul's shoulder and giggled. "David, your hair looks like chicken wings." David remained silent. Upon witnessing this scene, the reporter quickly snapped a photo. The scandal involving Paul dissipated. However, speculations regarding the connection between the Crook family and the Miller family emerged. If the two families were truly uniting, the business world of the capital would be shaken. Paul and Kate returned inside. Both uncle and niece took their seats on the sofa while Emma reclined in a relaxed manner. There was an air of elegance in Paul's roguishness. Despite Emma's reclining posture, her legs were crossed, exuding an inexplicable grace. Kate, on the other hand, was sprawled across the sofa like a pancake. She patted her belly and remarked, "Good girl, Uncle Paul won't give you cake. What are we going to do?" "Oh, no sugar, no drinks. How pitiful." Paul was speechless. The duo hadn't enjoyed peace for long when someone approached them, seeking friendship. With excessive enthusiasm, they blabbered on and on. One of them said, "Miss Kate, could you predict when my daughter-in-law will give birth? Will it be a boy or a girl?" Someone else said, "Kate, can you calculate why my sister is so wealthy?" Paul was bombarded with noise, but he had nowhere to escape. His role for the day was to act as a bodyguard. Thus, he simply closed his eyes, trying to relax and pretending not to hear the commotion around him. Amidst the cacophony, Kate's childlike voice occasionally rang out. She said to a lady, "Grandma, your grandson will be born in 3 days." The elderly woman of the same social circle was taken aback and blurted out, "Nonsense, my daughter-in-law is only 8 months pregnant." It was too early for the due date. The old lady felt a little disappointed. Although she knew that Kate was likely just making things up, she would still believe it even if she casually mentioned it for another 2 weeks. The old woman couldn't help but complain. "My daughter-in-law won't give birth for at least another month. Really, it's absurd." The difference was a month unless her daughter-in-law was hiding something from them, like home birth. Kate shook her head. Master had said that if someone believed in divination, they should truly believe it. But if they didn't, there was no need to waste each other's time. The old woman pouted and departed. Several others continued asking questions, and Kate answered each one of them. "Sister, how can you become rich? How do you plan on getting rich?" A young girl questioned another one in the crowd. Another young girl exclaimed, "I became rich overnight. I have so much money, even more than Mr. Crook." She turned her head affectionately and glanced at Albert, who was not far away. But Kate, in her immature yet serious tone, replied, "Well, that's just a dream. It was impossible to have more money than her uncle, who was exceptionally skilled." The young lady remained silent, unable to argue. People continued to question Kate. Those who received favorable omens smiled happily, while those who didn't muttered, "No, it's probably just hype." Paul crossed his arms and sneered, "It's modern superstition." Kate looked up curiously and asked, "What do you mean by modern superstition?" With a serious expression, David placed his hands neatly on his knees, pursed his lips, and explained, "Modern superstitions include things like having a bad dream and comforting yourself by thinking that dreams are the opposite of reality. But if you have a good dream, you'll feel like you're going to be lucky. If the left eye twitches, people believe it signifies wealth. While if the right eye twitches, they reassure themselves that it's just fatigue." He continued, "This is what we call modern superstition." Kate was left surprised. Suddenly she lifted her head and gazed at David with sparkling eyes. David's back stiffened and he pursed his lips before asking, "What's wrong?" Kate snapped her fingers. "Wow, David, this is when you decide to talk the most. It's amazing," she thought. He could only speak 5 words at a time. David remained silent. He believed she would praise him for his extensive knowledge. Paul had a half smile and adjusted his posture to a more comfortable position, propping his chin to observe the 2 little ones. Children can be so foolish and immature. The focus was peculiar. The creation's listing ceremony had ended, leaving Kate feeling too full. She drifted off to sleep. Paul gently embraced her while Albert approached, removing his suit jacket and draping it over her. 2 godlike men, guarding a small girl, walked along the red carpet lined with cameras. They greeted Oliver, entered the car and drove away. David stood at the venue entrance, quietly watching as the Crook family's car gradually moved away. "Let's go," Oliver said. David hummed, taking one final glance at the Crook family's car. If they were to meet again, he would bring her 2 candies. 2 because she liked to eat them, not 1 more, as he feared it would cause tooth decay. Next to the Miller family's car stood a short, portly, middle-aged man who bid farewell to Oliver with a smile on his face. This man stood at around 1.5 meters tall, with his shirt buttons straining against his beer belly, as if it would burst at any moment. He was none other than Tim Baker, the boss of Creations. Tim's elderly mother had given birth to 2 sets of twin sons in a row. When she became pregnant for the 3rd time, she hoped for a daughter. In anticipation of good fortune, she named the child in her womb, Tim. Unexpectedly, it was Tim who arrived in the world. Tim's mother felt disheartened and did not bother to rethink the name, so she carelessly named the child Tim. After bidding farewell to the Crook and Miller families, Tim finally felt a release of tension. "The little heir of the Crook family," he mumbled, his eyes unfocused. "Now that's a real little heir." His elderly mother had fallen ill, a strange illness. When Tim learned about Kate rescuing David, he experienced a sudden surge of auspiciousness. He wondered if he would have the opportunity to invite this little heir to meet his mother. As Tim walked inside, he instructed his assistant next to him, "Remember, in the future, whenever Kate arrives, there's no need for applications or notifications. Just go and invite the best baker in the provincial capital to make cakes on the spot, according to Kate's preferences." He continued to instruct, "Kate doesn't enjoy overly sweet treats, dislikes chocolate flavor, prefers fruit cakes, and enjoys fruit candies. Make sure to include this in the employee handbook." "Why include this in the employee handbook?" the assistant asked. After the car left for Crook Mansion, Kate was in a daze as she slept. She sensed someone staring at her. She turned her head and saw an old woman in a green tank suit standing before her, staring directly at her. Kate was startled and abruptly opened her eyes. Keizo beside her was taken aback. "What's wrong?" Kate's eyes still held a trace of fear as she said, "Master, I saw an old woman in my dream." Keizo was surprised and asked, "What did the old lady look like?" Kate raised her hand and gestured. Her eyes were sunken, and so were her cheeks. The area under her eyes had a blue tinge. "Have you seen her before?" Keizo inquired. Kate shook her head. "No." Keizo squinted his eyes, his features sunken, and his eyes had a blue hue, resembling that of a deceased person. He thought, most importantly, Kate's never seen her before. This means that the dead are reaching out to Kate. Keizo's expression grew more serious as he asked, "Little kid, have you dreamt of anything else?" Kate shook her head, puzzled. "Master, what's wrong?" The master's expression seemed burdened. "Kate, from now on, you must tell the master about your dreams," Keizo said. With a complex expression, he continued, "Do you know why the master came to your side?" Kate, still groggy from just waking up, blinked her eyes and replied, "I know." "Master, are you taking Kate's exam?" Mom asked the master to come. She still remembered the master's words from before. Keizo fell silent for a moment. He had believed it was a mere coincidence that he had encountered Carolina and made a promise to protect Kate temporarily. That was all. However, he later discovered that protecting Kate wasn't as simple as it seemed. He needed merits to extend his own life. Keizo opened his booklet and saw a line of bright red remarks beneath Kate's name. He read, "If she causes someone's death at the 3rd hour, she will ensure nobody survives past the 5th hour." It seemed like the only one to possess such an ability was Hades. Did he truly coincidentally meet Carolina, who had just perished, and subsequently end up by Kate's side through logical reasoning? "Kate, do you still remember the soul gourd the master gave you?" he asked Kate. Kate raised her hand. Keizo saw a small, fair arm akin to a lotus root. It had a red rope tied around the wrist, and a small gourd hanging from it. "Here it is," Kate replied. Keizo raised his hand, lightly touched the soul gourd with his fingertips, and said, "The master never mentioned before that this soul gourd needs to be filled." He continued, "If it's not enough, you may have to leave." Kate, still groggy, suddenly bolted upright and asked with wide eyes, "Where am I going?" She had just reunited with her uncles, grandmother, and grandfather. Kate didn't want to leave. "To a distant place, never to return," Keizo replied. Kate pursed her lips, quickly got up, and hurriedly ran to the bathroom. She turned on the faucet and began pouring water into the soul gourd. The soul gourd was only the size of a fingernail, and even with the faucet flowing into it, it seemed impossible to fill. Kazu's mouth twitched. "Kate." He rubbed his forehead and said, "The reason why it's called a soul gourd is because it's meant to hold souls." Kazu paused and spoke, "If there aren't enough souls, you may have to leave." Kate tilted her head and asked, "Then what should I do?" Keizo replied, "You should pretend to be a ghost, as long as the gourd is full." Opening the booklet, Kazu read aloud, "To trap wandering spirits, you need to trap 100 of them. To pretend to be a ghost, you need to pretend 49 times. Pretending to be an evil spirit is potent. You only need to pretend 18 times." He added. Kate nodded and said, "Understood." She examined the opening of the gourd and inquired, "Master, has the ugly ant inside filled the gourd?" Kazu sneered, "Far from it." Kate sighed and commented, "Aunt Ugly is really useless. It was as big as a human being when it floated out, yet it couldn't even fill such a small soul gourd." Ugly Ant Ghost grumbled, "Hey, are you asking too much of me?" Suddenly Kate exclaimed, "Master, Sarah has an evil spirit on her head, right?" Keizo made a note in the booklet with a pen without looking up and replied, "Yes." Kate's face lit up. "I'm going to find Roy." Without wasting any time, she released her grip and dashed out of the room. Keizo wondered, what is she doing? Why did she need to find Roy? Floating out, he asked, "Why are you looking for Roy?" Kate glanced back at Keizo briefly. "Master, you're so silly. If I want to find Sarah, I should go look for her directly. Sarah and Roy go to the same school, and I want to go to that school too, so I have to find Roy," she replied. After finishing her explanation, Kate gave Keizo a sympathetic look. She wondered, Master's probably been dead for so long that his brain is broken. Keizo remained silent. He was genuinely despised by a 9-year-old girl named Kate. He felt the black lines covering his face. Kate hurriedly made her way to Roy's room. The two young masters of the Crook family were named Roy and Alex. They were known for their indifference, and Albert rarely had time to accompany them. Around the ages of 9 or 10, they gradually adjusted to their situation. As they grew older, both of them possessed indifferent personalities. Alex focused more on liberal arts. Roy, on the other hand, was more inclined towards science and engineering. At that moment, he sat in his room holding a pen, attempting a function exercise. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupted him, and he raised his head and coldly said, "Come in." Kate poked her head in and softly called out, "Roy!" Roy frowned and thought, "The bothersome sister has arrived." He said coldly, "What do you want this time?" When Lucas said to Kate that he would eat 10 pounds of trash, Kate asked Roy how much trash would 10 pounds be. Roy had answered that question unhappily. It was an insult to the field of mathematics. He had listed numerous formulas and calculated an entire page, but she ended up memorizing the words, a bucket, an iron bucket. Kate hugged her little rabbit, gazed at Roy expectantly and asked, "Roy, can you take me to school with you tomorrow?" Roy responded expressionlessly, "That's impossible." He couldn't take her with him even in this lifetime. He detested being followed around the most. He still had classes to attend. Who had time to take care of her? Kate blinked pitifully and said, "But..." Impatiently, Roy pushed her out of the door. "Go and play, don't bother me." And with that, he forcefully closed the door. Outside the door, Kate looked up at the tall door and sighed. She started to wonder if she was not cute enough to convince Roy. so she rushed back to her room and changed into a strawberry skirt. She again knocked on Roy's door. Roy. This time, Kate didn't even say a word before Roy opened and shut the door again. Keizo had initially crossed his arms, stubbornly observing the commotion. However, witnessing Kate being kicked out of the room twice, he became restless. How dare they treat his precious disciple like this? Kate, go find your grandma. Tell her and Roy will definitely take you. Unexpectedly, Kate shook her head. No way. Children's matters should be resolved by children themselves. She continued in a stubborn tone. We're not kids anymore. It's naive to run to adults with complaints every time. Kazu's expression turned into a puzzled one. Ever since she crossed the age of 8 and celebrated her 9th birthday, this little girl started acting as though she wasn't still a child. Keizo didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he asked, Then what do you plan to do? Roy wasn't someone she could reason with. Seeing that Kate wasn't discouraged, she ran downstairs to get a glass of juice, then carefully made her way back upstairs. Catherine entered from the garden and said, Kate, Grandma will help you. Kate's cute voice responded, No need, Grandma. Don't worry about children's matters. Catherine wondered what she was doing here. Kate ascended the stairs with the juice and knocked on Roy's door. This time, after waiting for a while, Roy opened the door abruptly and asked angrily, What on earth do you want? It was infuriating. He could have finished his functions exercise, but Kate had repeatedly interrupted him. She paused for a moment, realizing that she might have been disturbing her brother. She handed over the juice and whispered, Roy, have some juice. Impatiently, Roy pushed the juice away and sharply retorted, I won't drink it. Can you stop bothering me? The full glass of juice spilled, creating a splash of orange droplets. The smile on Kate's face gradually faded, and she said, I'm sorry, Roy. She took the juice and turned to leave. It was her fault. She shouldn't have disturbed her brother while he was studying. Kate planned on asking Roy again later that evening. Observing Kate, Roy couldn't help but feel irritated. Was she crying now? She was already annoying enough. Come back, he coldly stated. Kate quickly turned around, a smile on her face. Yes? Roy thought she might be crying, but her big smile caught him off guard, momentarily leaving him stunned. The rhythm was all messed up. You! Bring the juice, he ordered. Immediately, Kate felt elated and handed the remaining juice to Roy. He awkwardly said thank you, and Kate's childish voice cheerfully replied, You're welcome. Roy pretended to brush it off, took a sip of the juice and couldn't help but frown. Yuck, orange juice, he thought to himself. He despised orange juice the most. Through the cup, Roy saw Kate's expectant face. His mouth lost control and he forcefully gulped down the glass of orange juice. Observing Roy choking down the juice in one go, Kate felt overjoyed. Goodbye, Roy. She turned around and happily bounced away. He stared at the empty cup in his hand, then at Kate skipping away. Why had it felt like he had been tricked? He closed the door. After drinking that glass of juice, he owed her nothing. Taking her to school was still out of the question. At night after dinner, Kate once again rushed to Roy's room. Just as she was about to knock on the door, she realized that something had been troubling her. Keizo noticed this and asked, What's wrong? Kate whispered, What if my brother is still studying? Disturbing others can be an unpleasant experience after all. Keizo suggested, Can't you ask the ugly aunt to go in and check? Kate's eyes lit up. Yes. Ugly Aunt was a ghost who could pass through walls. Kate immediately extended her hand and summoned the female ghost out of the soul gourd. Ugly Aunt, Kate pleaded for assistance. Oh no, pleading with ghosts required a different tone. She sincerely said, Ugly Aunt, can you secretly see what my brother is doing for me? The female ghost looked displeased. Before helping her, the female ghost wanted Kate to please remove the term ugly aunt. For her, referring to her even as a dead ghost was better than ugly aunt. The female ghost mumbled and passed through the wall. She didn't find Roy in the room, so she followed his trail and arrived at the bathroom. Passing through the bathroom door, she saw Roy sitting on the toilet engrossed in a book on mathematics. He looked serious. Suddenly the female ghost let out a snort. Through the reflection on the foggy glass, she saw her own figure. At that moment, Roy lifted his head. The female ghost instinctively turned her head. Their eyes met. Roy exclaimed, Ghost! Startled, Roy abandoned his unfinished business in the bathroom, without bothering to either wipe or wear his pants, and rushed out of the room. Kate patiently waited outside the door. Suddenly the door clicked open, and a figure quickly sprang out of the room with half of his behind exposed. Seeing Roy's frightened expression, Kate hurriedly chased after him. While Kate chased him, Roy, who was too afraid to even look back to check who was chasing him, became even more frightened. He ran into the study and shouted, "Dad, help!" Mason and Catherine heard his voice and hurried out to ask, "What's wrong?" They saw that in the corridor of the second floor, two children were running wildly. He ran and she chased. Albert too walked out of the study and saw Roy, who had his pants pulled up, running wildly while Kate chased after him. "What's the matter?" Albert asked while Roy threw himself in Albert's arms. Immediately a peculiar smell wafted through the air. Albert was silent. "You didn't wipe your butt in the toilet?" he questioned. Unable to overcome the shock, Roy exclaimed, "There's a ghost!" Panting, Kate caught up and said, "Brother, there are no ghosts. She's a human, not a ghost. You didn't have to run like this." Kate immediately grew suspicious. Even though the ugly aunt was a ghost, under normal circumstances, people couldn't see her. The female ghost who had been floating behind was also equally puzzled. "What? He can see me. How is that possible?" the female ghost asked. She approached Roy to inquire but noticed that his eyes were still focused on something behind her. Keizo squinted his eyes. This matter was getting weirder. Firstly, Kate saw the dead soul of the old lady in her dream. Then Roy inexplicably saw a female ghost, and now Keizo lowered his eyes and stared at Kate. In an attempt to calm him, Albert patted Roy's shoulder and said, "There's no ghost. It's just Kate." With a stiff expression, Roy turned around and indeed saw Kate standing behind him. Behind Kate were their grandparents, who had just arrived when Roy rushed out of his room. Nothing else. As the breeze blew, Roy felt a cold sensation on his behind. Kate quickly covered his eyes and asked, "Brother, why did you run out without wearing pants?" Even though Roy quickly managed to pull up his pants, still he felt very uncomfortable around everyone. "I have never been so ashamed since I grew up," he exclaimed. Upon remembering that he hadn't wiped his butt, Roy wanted to go back immediately and take a bath. However, that thought also reminded him of the scene in the bathroom just a while ago. Roy gritted his teeth and said, "I just saw a very ugly female ghost." The female ghost, who was about to speak, suddenly felt a critical hit. She sadly wondered, "Am I really that ugly?" Doubting her ghostly appearance, Kazo asked, "What's going on?" The female ghost shook her head saying, "I don't know. I saw him going to the toilet when I first arrived, and then our eyes met when I looked up." This incident left the Crook family surprised as well as confused. Albert said, "Why don't you go take a bath first?" Roy's back felt stiff. Kate asked, "Brother, are you afraid? If you are, then..." Before she could finish, Roy snorted, gritted his teeth and said, "Who's afraid?" After saying this, he reluctantly walked back to his room. Albert frowned and said, "Kate, go back to your room with Grandma." He then followed Roy into his room. Upon seeing this, Kazo raised his eyebrows with unclear intentions. Then he suddenly ordered, "Tina, go in and have a look." Kate glared at Keizo and said, "Master, don't do anything wrong." Kate looked at Roy's retreating figure, then at her own little hands and wondered, was it me who has done something wrong? Well, probably not. Definitely not. Inside the room, Roy was relieved to see his father present. After coming out of the shower, he didn't see anything unusual. Albert was looking at the arithmetic book on his desk. When he saw Roy, he asked calmly, "Did you really see a ghost just now?" Roy pursed his lips and whispered, "Maybe I was mistaken." Albert was about to respond, but he paused and thought of something else. He simply said, "Remember, no matter what the situation is, you must always protect your sister." Hearing this, Roy said, "Kate wants to go to school with me tomorrow." Albert paused, his fingertips hovering, and without hesitation he said, "Then you take her there. Kate isn't an unreasonable child. She must have her reasons for wanting to go along." Roy asked, "Father, aren't you afraid of spoiling Kate like Jane?" "No." Albert stood up and replied. Roy pouted, portraying his skepticism. "Kate has proved to be the most annoying," Albert thought to himself as he returned to the study and made a phone call to make arrangements for Kate. "Please notify Pearson International School to send a set of school uniforms and a school bag," he instructed over the phone. "And also, strengthen the school's security measures," he added. The following day, Kate woke up early and proudly carried her small school bag on her back. She wore a school uniform, a slightly baggy one since it was the smallest size available in the urgently sent batch. Her little skirt was tied high on her waist, and the hat she wore covered her face. Despite this, she tried her best to raise her head and look at the crowd from under the brim. Mason gently pushed up the brim of her hat and reminded her, "When you arrive at school, make sure to pay attention to your safety." Catherine, always worried, couldn't help but nag, "Why can't I accompany her? How can such a small child manage without an adult by her side?" Brent, with one hand in his pocket, waited for Harry to join him as they headed to school. Sneering, he replied, "We could do it when we were her age, so why can't Kate?" Without waiting for a response, he got into the bus with a blank expression on his face. When he was Kate's age, his mother showered his younger sister with love, while he was left to entertain himself with a mobile phone. If he wanted to sleep next to his mother, she reminded him that he was a boy and shouldn't cling to her. Even when he woke up frightened in the middle of the night, his mother insisted he confront his fears. At that point, there was no one else in the Crook family, and his uncle was busy with his own affairs and looking after his two older brothers. Brent glanced out the window at Kate, who was receiving adoring attention from everyone, and snorted. He was both unhappy and envious, though his true envy only came to the surface when no one was around. Suddenly, Kate looked back, catching Brent's gaze. He quickly averted his eyes and pulled out his phone to play games. Albert hugged Kate and walked her to the bus. "Do you want me to come with you?" he asked. Kate waved her little hand dismissively. "No need," she exclaimed confidently. "By the way, Uncle Albert, don't forget to take me shopping today," she reminded him. Kate had fallen asleep after yesterday's ribbon-cutting ceremony and had forgotten to go shopping. She wanted to buy silver needles to treat her grandma. Albert responded warmly, "Okay, Uncle will pick you up at noon." Roy got into the bus first, carrying Kate in his arms. He turned to her with a cold expression and said, "Listen up, you're not allowed to cry at school." He glanced at Kate, threateningly adding, "If you do, I'll leave you all alone." Kate obediently nodded and replied, "Okay, good brother." Roy had planned to threaten her further, but when he saw Kate's cute, pouty face, he couldn't bring himself to say anything else. With a stern expression, he led Kate into the bus. The students inside the bus were surprised to see Roy with a trailing little sister. "Ha, Roy, why are you dragging your tail along?" one of them teased. This was the special bus for Pearson International Private School. Many children passed, observing the short and stubby Kate with astonishment. At the back of the seat sat a boy who stood out from the rest. Unlike the other children, who seemed unsteady on their feet, he had the posture of a disciplined soldier, with a determined expression on his young face. As soon as Kate looked up, she saw David and immediately beamed with joy. "Hi, David," she greeted him enthusiastically. David remained silent, wondering what he should do. He had forgotten to bring candy today. David pursed his lips, his face was cold and serious. Kate curiously asked, "David, are you unhappy?" David turned his head, saying, David pursed his lips, his face was cold and serious. Kate curiously asked, "David, are you unhappy?" David turned his head, saying, "No." Kate didn't ask any more questions but sat on the seat, imitating David's appearance, placing her little hands on her knees neatly. The school bus drove steadily on the way to school. Pearson's International Private School was the best private primary school in Chicago. The students who attended Pearson's International Private School were all children from wealthy families, and the least well-off among them were from the Smith family. Sarah got out of the private car and hurriedly waved her hand, saying, "Mom, goodbye." She tensed her back, fearing that her classmates would see she had arrived in a private car. Pearson's International was different from other ordinary schools. Children from families with deep heritage arrived by the school bus. The bright yellow school bus was actually equipped with thick armor, and the driver was a re-employed personnel who had retired from the war. The accompanying teachers were retired from the special forces, ensuring the children's safety completely. The cost of each Moonlight school bus was very high, which meant that the transportation expenses for the children in Pearson's International School exceeded $100,000 per year. Sarah's family was reluctant to spend that much money on transportation, so Sarah was always driven to school by her mother, which added to her shame. "Be careful," Sarah's mother warned. Seeing the school bus approaching from a distance, Sarah hurriedly said, "I know, Mommy. You should go back quickly now." She was afraid of being seen. Others would laugh at her for not being able to afford the school bus. Sarah's mother didn't say what she wanted to say and immediately drove away. The bright yellow school bus slowly entered the school, and Sarah followed closely. When she reached the side of the school bus, she happened to pass by, giving the impression that she also arrived by bus. She was clever and had already timed it. The bus door opened and Sarah slowed down a bit. In the reflection of the bus door, she didn't see a shadow twice her size riding on her neck. Sarah walked forward with her head down, pretending to the outside world that she had just gotten off the bus and casually passing by the children inside. Feeling guilty, she quickly walked about a meter away, and her two followers came running from a distance, greeting happily. "Sarah, you just arrived." Sarah nodded and said, "Well, the school bus was a little late today." Kate wondered, why was the school bus late today? Sarah shook her head. "I don't know. It seems the driver was feeling a bit unwell." The school bus was on time. This was the first time she was late. But her two silly and cute friends didn't know the difference. The two little friends were envious of her and said, "Hey, it's so amazing to come to school by bus." The other one replied, "That's right. Only a few people can come to our school by bus." Sarah remained modest, saying, "Actually, it's nothing. Taking the school bus is just like taking a private car." She smiled shyly without any pretentiousness, unlike those girls and young masters from aristocratic families, so everyone liked her more. As Sarah walked to the classroom, she encountered more and more classmates along the way. She noticed that when they saw Sarah, their expressions changed. "Wow, Sarah, you went to the ribbon-cutting ceremony of creations yesterday, didn't you? I saw you in the background of a photo," one of her classmates said. The other one asked, "That's right, have you seen our idol?" "Oh, Sarah, you are so lucky to be able to be there." "Hey, I also wish to take photos with celebrities." Someone pulled out a photo. It was a photo of a celebrity at the opening ceremony of creation. The background of the photo was the ribbon-cutting ceremony, and Sarah in a princess dress was not far away. She was surrounded by many people, and everyone seemed to be chatting happily. Sarah was instantly satisfied. She said embarrassingly, "How did you find out about this? Originally, only my father was supposed to be there on behalf of the Miller family. We were trying to keep a low profile. I don't know how people found out. It's so annoying to be bothered like this." The eyes of her friends looking at Sarah were even more admiring. One of them commented, "The Miller family? Isn't that David from our class? I haven't met David's father yet. I didn't expect Sarah to represent the Miller family." The other one asked, "Then what's the relationship between you and David? Wow, your parents seem to be very close. Is it like they show on TV?" Her friends bombarded her with questions. Sarah looked shy, saying, "Oh, don't ask me about this." She covered her face and returned to her seat, burying her face in the book. There's no smoke without fire. When Sarah remembered Shaven saying how she and David were a perfect match, her words and actions developed in that direction. Sarah had thoughts more mature than her peers, which adults found hard to comprehend, but they filled someone like Sarah with excitement. Unknown to all present there, a ghost had been riding around Sarah's neck. It let out a laugh. To be so vain and a show-off, at such a young age yet with such great vanity. It's the best thing for me. The evil ghost held Sarah's head, squinting contentedly. He sucked out a dark cloud from Sarah's body, his mouth wide open. On the other side, Kate obediently followed Roy. David walked silently at the back. As Kate bombarded Roy with questions, "Roy, will I be in the same class as you? Can I sit with you later?" "Which class is Sarah in?" Roy finally said impatiently. "Shut up." He felt so embarrassed all the other kids came by themselves, but he had a little tag-along. He was ashamed to the very core. Kate immediately covered her mouth and said softly, "Okay, I'm sorry." Little Kate blinked and looked at Roy, tightly covering her mouth with her little hands. Upon seeing Roy's anger, she quickly let go of her mouth and said, "Brother, don't worry. I will never argue with you again. Well, a few errands to run and a few things to take care of." She started muttering a poem about chubby chicken that made Roy feel even more ashamed of his little sister. He thought, should I just tell her not to come? Where could he find a chubby chicken at school? The cafeteria seemed to sell chubby sheep, but they were all chubby sheep snacks made of flour. Roy said goodbye to his younger siblings downstairs. Seeing his older brother leave in a cool manner, Alex was overwhelmed with envy. Roy did not want to deal with that little troublemaker, his sister Kate, but there was no other choice. Seeing the little fool still standing there, curiously looking around, Roy angrily grabbed her, took her hand, and went upstairs into the classroom. Other students in the class seemed to be laughing and teasing Roy. Hey Roy, is this your sister? Why did you bring your sister to school? Others have baby daddies, and you have a baby sister. They laughed. Boys of this age were mostly the naughtiest, pulling the braids of the little girls and causing trouble. It was the time when they had the most free time, so when they saw Roy bringing Kate, they naturally made fun of them. Roy felt extremely embarrassed. In the future, if he ever brought his younger sister to school, he would be humiliated. As soon as Kate stepped into the classroom, she caught sight of Sarah. Her eyes instantly lit up. Wow, there's a big evil spirit on Sarah's neck, she muttered. Noticing Kate's gaze, the evil spirit lifted its head and gave her a malicious stare, as if warning her to mind her own business. Kazo whispered, just as I expected. Little school bag, I'll see what you've got today. Let Master see if you've made any progress. Kate clenched her small fists, eyes sparkling. Yes. At that moment, a young female teacher entered the room, spotted Roy and Kate, and asked with a smile, Is this Kate? Are you here to experience school life? Kate shook her head, then vigorously nodded. Yeah. Of course she had come to school, but she couldn't admit that she was here to catch ghosts and evil spirits. She wondered, what if the beautiful teacher got so scared she ran out of the restroom naked like Roy? The female teacher found Kate's adorable expression amusing and inquired, So Kate, are you sitting with your brother? Roy immediately turned his head. The teacher pondered for a moment, considering temporarily changing Roy's desk partner. But Kate pointed to the seat next to Sarah and said, Teacher, I want to sit with Sarah. The teacher suddenly realized, that's right, Sarah's desk partner happened to be absent today. Kazo frowned on the side. He thought, what rotten luck this was. Sarah didn't feel too well, and she didn't want to sit with Kate. She still remembered Kate pouring tonic on her during the camping trip. But the female classmate in front of Sarah turned around and exclaimed, Wow, Sarah, you not only have a good relationship with the Miller family, but also with the Crook family. Otherwise, why would Kate choose Sarah at first sight instead of someone else? Sarah's reluctance vanished immediately. That sense of vain satisfaction made her smile and say, Not really, I just went camping with Kate once. Kate, come to my side. Sarah patted the chair next to her. Kate hurriedly ran to Sarah with her small school bag and sat down. Sarah's eyes curved with a smile as she tried to get closer to Kate. However, Kate took out an old turtle from her school bag and placed it on the table with its back turned. The old turtle exclaimed, then she took out a parrot and placed it inside the drawer. The little parrot quickly released its feet and scurried into the drawer, hiding in there with a splayed pace. Sarah was astonished. The children in the class were taken aback, and the female teacher was shocked as well. What was this all about? Roy felt embarrassed and covered his forehead. He was even more embarrassed because he had to sit with his juniors for Kate's sake, as he promised Albert that he would take care of her. It was disgraceful for him to sit with the kids in middle school. Kate, what are you? The female teacher carefully chose her words. Kate obediently replied, Teacher, don't worry, the turtle can't speak, and little parrot won't make any noise. After a pause, she added, They are my pets, so when I go outside, they feel lonely at home, so they clamor to come with me. The female teacher rubbed her forehead, her mouth twitching. Since when did turtles and birds experience loneliness? Do you even know what loneliness is? She whispered. However, the teacher didn't say anything and simply smiled, saying, Kate, this is a classroom. If the turtle or parrot disrupts the class, I will have to take them away, okay? Because Kate came from a wealthy family, none of the teachers had the authority to impose strict rules on her. The school administration explicitly instructed them to allow Kate to disregard certain rules due to her privileged background. This special treatment was the sole reason why she was able to shadow Sarah, despite the fact that Kate should have been focusing on her own studies in elementary school. Earlier that morning, before the class began, the school board held a meeting. Pearson's International was a private school with the Crook family as its biggest sponsor. In the initial stage of the school's establishment, before Pearson's International gained its reputation, it required $10 million for building the school and hiring teachers, and the Crook family invested $8 billion. So when Albert asked the school to take care of his little niece for a day, the principal had no choice but to agree. The female teacher couldn't say anything. Seeing the turtle retracting its head into its shell and remaining motionless, and the parrot in the drawer obediently staying quiet, she looked at Kate with her bright eyes and nodded. Okay. The female teacher had to start the class. Kazo floated to the side, his gaze fixed on the evil spirit sitting on Sarah's head. The evil ghost observed Kazo warily, but there was confusion in its eyes. It couldn't sense any evil aura from Kazo, nor could it determine what kind of ghost Kazo was. Kazo educated Kate, explaining, "This is a vain ghost. After class, I'll invite Sarah to the little grove and we'll capture it. Tell her not to leave after school. See you in the woods." Kate nodded quietly. "Yes, capture it. See you in the woods." Sarah was listening attentively during class when she heard this and was momentarily stunned. "What?" Kate leaned closer, mimicking Kazo's arrogance on her face. "Don't leave after school. See you in the woods." The classroom was in an uproar. The female teacher was also taken aback. "What's going on?" The first class ended quickly. The female teacher put down her lesson plan and looked at Kate. She was surprised to find that this little girl remained extremely focused throughout the entire class, as if she genuinely belonged there. With a smile on her face, the female teacher walked toward Kate and asked, "Kate, did you understand the lesson?" She hadn't expected Kate to understand, but Kate nodded and said, "I understand." The store shipped 50 baskets of fruit. 12 baskets were sold in the morning, and 14 baskets were sold in the afternoon. "How many baskets are left?" "The answer is 24 baskets left," she added. She continued, "The workers want to build a 100-meter-long road. They repaired 64 meters on the first day, and the rest still needs to be repaired. After 6 days of work, how many meters were repaired per day? The answer is 6 meters. The female teacher was surprised and couldn't help but exclaim, "Kate, you're amazing." Kate looked puzzled and asked, "Teacher, if the workers could repair 64 meters on the first day, why did they only repair 6 meters daily? Couldn't they finish it in one day?" The female teacher paused, unsure of how to respond. Just when she was feeling stuck and didn't know how to recover, the math teacher from the adjacent office walked in. "What's going on?" "Kate, did you understand what the teacher explained today?" Kate nodded again and replied, "Yes, I understood." Of course, she could understand the words and even recite what the teacher had said. She just didn't understand why. The female teacher introduced Kate to the math teacher who had just arrived, saying, "Kate is very good. She memorized everything I taught." She didn't want to admit it, but she wanted to avoid addressing Kate's previous question. It was embarrassing. She had been a teacher for several years, yet she couldn't answer a question from a 9-year-old child. However, the math teacher was intrigued and exclaimed, "Really? Kate is so good. Then let me test you." She asked. The kid has 50 lollipops, 70 marshmallows, and 100 fruit candies in his pocket. The kid ate 50 lollipops, 60 marshmallows, and 100 fruit candies. Can you tell me what kind of candy the kid has now? Kate shook her head and said, "The kid now has diabetes. Just like my grandma, she has diabetes." The two teachers were momentarily taken aback and then burst into laughter. There seemed to be nothing wrong with that answer. Upon seeing the two teachers surrounded by Kate, Sarah felt a twinge of envy in her heart, although she wore a smile on her face. She quickly put on a smile and said, "Kate, that's incorrect. 50 minus 50 equals 0, and 100 minus 100 is also equal to 0. Subtracting 60 from 70 gives you 10, so all the lollipops and fruit candies are gone, and there are 10 marshmallows left. No diabetes remains." Sarah made an effort to demonstrate her counting skills and looked at the teacher expectantly after she finished speaking, secretly hoping for praise. However, the teacher's attention was solely focused on Kate, and they have yet to respond to Sarah. Beside them, Exie slapped the table and burst into laughter. "Ha! The kid has diabetes! That's hilarious!" The other children joined in the laughter. They gathered around Kate, teasing her, finding it amusing. Sarah watched as Kate became the center of attention, while her own words went unnoticed. She suddenly felt embarrassed and ashamed. The two teachers patted Kate's head, told her to approach them if she needed anything, and then left the room. The students immediately gathered around and looked at the turtle on Kate's desk. "Kate, why did you bring the turtle here? And why is it lying down like that?" Kate explained, "Because if you turn it over, Grandpa Turtle will zoom out." Another person asked, "Hey, where was your little parrot earlier?" Kate crouched in front of the desk, pressing her small face against the drawer, and looked at Exie inside, saying, "Exie is in there. He's afraid of strangers." The children chimed in, "Then how can we make him not afraid? Does he eat bread?" The children imitated Kate, squatting or sitting on their knees, their heads together, peering at the parrot in the drawer, filled with excitement and curiosity. Kate instantly became the class favorite. Sarah, who sat at the same table, was pushed aside. Sarah felt a surge of anger. In the past, when the class ended, everyone liked to gather around her and chat with her. Now they all went to Kate's spot. Apart from Sarah, Roy too was equally displeased. For some reason, Kate was supposed to be an annoying younger sister, yet seeing her surrounded by others, Roy felt unhappy once again. He angrily slammed the book shut. Sarah heard the noise, turned her gaze, and walked toward Roy to inquire. "Roy, everyone likes Kate so much. Kate is so good at talking. Unlike me, I stumble over my words," she pointed out. Sarah thought, "Roy doesn't like Kate either, does he?" Then she expected Roy to respond, "What do you see in a child like Kate? I like someone like you." Unexpectedly, Roy, a boy with a scientific and engineering inclination, possessed a steely determination from a young age and saw through Sarah's insincerity directly. He said, "Why? At what age did you learn the art of being two-faced? What are you trying to pretend to be in front of me?" She remained silent. Her eyes turned red as she asked, "Roy, why would you say that about me?" "Get lost," Roy angrily retorted. He was unlike his brother Alex. Alex, a humanities-oriented person, had a certain level of hypocrisy and gentleness, although Roy acknowledged that this prejudice against humanities students was his own. During their previous camping trip, Sarah tried to cling to his brother, but he still maintained his composure, and Roy felt that he wasn't manly enough. A real man should be like him. Roy glanced indifferently at Sarah, who hadn't left yet, and impatiently said, "Will you leave? If you don't, I'll make you." Sarah bit her lip and left with a crestfallen expression. She returned to her seat and noticed even more people gathered around Kate. They were all happily playing with Kate, and the chubby boy had even taken her place. Just as the class bell rang, Sarah walked over, suppressing her discontent, and said, "Everyone, hurry back to your seats." The young students reluctantly returned to their seats. In less than 10 minutes after class, Kate had made many friends, and she was thrilled. This class was an English lesson now, and Kate couldn't understand it. At that moment, someone kicked Kate's chair. Kate turned around in confusion and saw a kid at the back table handing her a small note. Kate opened the note, pointed to the words written on it, and read it attentively. "Kate, have you eaten yet? Oh wait, would you like to have chicken drumsticks with me later?" Kazo couldn't help but smirk. He took a closer look and saw another note that read, "Kate, do you want to take your turtle and parrot outside to play after class? Can I pet your parrot?" Kazo couldn't help but find it amusing, rubbing his chin as he observed Kate muttering to herself, scribbling on the note, and drawing 2 chicken drumsticks. Amused, he watched Kate fold the note after her drawing and hand it back to the classmate behind her. Sarah placed her hands on the table, sat up straight, and suddenly raised her hand, saying, "Teacher, Travis, and Kate are passing notes during class." She knew that the English teacher was a strict individual who despised talking and passing notes in class, so she was certain that Kate would be scolded. Excitement gleamed in Sarah's eyes as she put on a righteous expression. The English teacher at the front interrupted and looked at Kate and the male classmate behind her. The English teacher, a serious middle-aged woman with black-rimmed glasses, walked over. She extended her hand and demanded sternly, "Hand it over." Travis's face turned pale, and he handed the small note in his hand to the English teacher. The English teacher unfolded the note, glanced at its contents, and then turned their attention to Kate. "Kate, Who told you to bring your pet to school? Who gave you such permission? Don't you know that these things distract the class and ruin the decorum? The teacher asked. The English teacher, a middle-aged woman with an eccentric personality, had been obsessed with rules ever since getting caught giving gifts. She had a constant air of an angry youth. Even though the school board had instructed everyone to take special care of Kate that morning, she simply didn't comply. Throughout the grade, her English classes were considered the best in the school. Grades were everything to her, so she had the confidence to be proud. Take your things and go stand outside, the English teacher commanded, looking down at Kate. Kate, who had never attended a class before, realized she had made a mistake. It turned out that passing notes in class was not allowed. She started speaking, "Teacher, I..." Before she could finish her sentence, the English teacher slammed the ruler on Kate's desk and said coldly, "I don't care whose family you come from or how wealthy you are. In my class, you must abide by my rules." Kate wanted to apologize, but as she looked at the teacher's stern expression with high cheekbones and thin lips, she remembered her master describing it as a harsh look. Deciding not to apologize further, Kate packed her small school bag, picked up her parrot and turtle, and left the classroom. Travis, lowering his head, didn't dare to argue and followed Kate outside for punishment. Sarah couldn't contain her joy and nearly burst out laughing. She thought, "Isn't it amazing? Look, who's the one getting punished? Did she think this was the Crook family? Look, without the Crook family, she's nothing." Sarah pursed her lips happily, her eyes filled with a smile. Little did she know that the hypocrite on her head took a deep breath, chattered, and suddenly bit her neck. The hypocrite clung to Sarah's neck, sucking her blood like a huge mosquito. Its transparent body and soul grew as it became engorged with blood. Sarah felt a chill on her neck, and her head began to feel groggy. Gradually, a layer of blue-gray dark circles appeared under her eyes. On the podium, the English teacher raised her nose and declared, "Remember, I don't care who your parents are or how wealthy you are. With me, my rules are the rules." Suddenly, she glanced at Roy and sneered. "Roy, is this your sister? I heard she was the reason behind Harry and Jennifer's divorce. They got divorced as soon as she arrived at your house?" Contemptuous irony flashed in the English teacher's eyes. She believed herself to be upright and uncompromising, saying whatever she pleased. She didn't like Roy herself, a student strong in science but weak in English, and now he had brought his privileged younger sister, who deserved severe punishment. The English teacher thought that Roy, who rarely spoke, was a bully, so she proudly continued with her chalk in hand. "A domineering kid like your sister needs to be taught a lesson. Don't follow her example." To her surprise, Roy suddenly stood up, slamming his book on the table. He uttered with a cold demeanor, "You have no authority to comment on my sister. As an educator, it's disgraceful to gossip about others in class instead of teaching diligently." While packing his school bag, he added, "Also, Harry and Jennifer divorced on their own. It has nothing to do with my sister. Jennifer is still in prison. Teacher, do you want to join her in there?" The English teacher was momentarily taken aback. She hadn't expected Roy, usually silent, to talk back so boldly. Anger trembled through her. She screamed, "You!" Her mind buzzed, momentarily wondering what happened to Roy. Roy, passing by the podium with his school bag, slung his school bag over his shoulder and walked out expressionlessly. A loud bang echoed in the classroom. The students admired Roy and whispered in the back. Everyone was amazed by Roy's actions. They admired the way he protected Kate. They didn't know that Roy had already promised Albert that he would protect his sister at any cost, so in his mind, his actions were justified. All the girls in the class stared at Roy. They looked at him with admiration in their eyes. Sarah stared at Roy too, and seeing the admiration from the other girls, she thought Roy seemed pretty impressive too. Seeing Roy not even glancing back, the English teacher seethed with anger. She sharply scolded, "You will never set foot in my classroom again. I don't want students like you who lack respect for teachers." Although he didn't belong to that class, she taught his class as well. Unfortunately, Roy paid her no attention whatsoever. The teacher felt a surge of anger in her chest, and her lungs ached with fury. Outside the corridor, Kate held the tortoise with both hands above her head, and Exie stood on top of the tortoise. Kate and Exie both sighed. Keizo had already said that he had gone for a stroll around the school since he was bored. Travis was very depressed at first, but he couldn't help but burst out laughing when he saw this scene. It was at this time that Roy came out, Seeing that Kate was actually standing obediently against the wall, he couldn't help being speechless. Let's go. His face was cold. Where are you going? Kate snorted. Don't you want to eat chicken? I will take you there, Roy replied. She was indeed a little troublesome in school, but Roy had been well versed in the way of money ability since he was a child. When Kate heard about the food, her eyes lit up. She poked her head into the class, only to see that Sarah seemed to be shriveled. Kate counted with her fingers and thought reluctantly, so leaving for a while, it's okay. Sarah was not her good friend anyway. Of course, for her, eating food and especially chicken was more important. Thinking of food, Kate quickly picked up the small school bag at her feet and stuffed the turtle and Exie into it. Let's go. She couldn't wait to eat chicken as she was craving it. Travis looked at the teacher in the classroom and then at Kate. He looked envious, but he dared not go. In the empty and quiet campus, occasionally the voices of students reciting in various classes could be heard. There were classes of physical education on the playground, and the physical education teacher blew his whistle from time to time. The free-moving students walked back in twos and threes, talking and laughing with the snacks they bought from the canteen. Roy walked around the campus with the cute little Kate. She looked at Roy with admiration since Roy had had her back. She asked him with excitement, Roy, where are we going? Kate asked again. Roy answered in a boring way, the cafeteria. The management of Pearson's International School was still very strict. None of the students could leave unless they were picked up by their parents. Roy pondered, should I call my father to pick us up? But since the school won't let me have my phone, I'll have to go to the class teacher to call Dad. He said out loud, never mind. Roy glanced at Kate, who was following with her short legs. He led Kate to the cafeteria and went straight to the line of makeshift food trucks next to it. There was a small supermarket and a line of makeshift food trucks on either side of the cafeteria. The high-end private schools naturally did the best in terms of food, but it was true that the food was expensive. The food trucks were not like regular street food stalls. Each store had a different cuisine, with floor-to-ceiling windows, sofas, chairs, and starlights dotted among the flower clusters. The area smelled like money. Roy asked one of the chefs from the food stalls, Chef, can we get a butter garlic medium rare steak and some chicken nuggets with apple slices on the side? Kate hurriedly interrupted Roy. One plate of raw shrimp as well. Turtle is hungry too. Roy turned to look at the chef and ordered, and a plate of raw shrimp. The chef replied, we haven't opened yet. Our fresh ingredients haven't been delivered. Roy took out his meal card. I will pay double. The chef replied, give me 15 minutes. I'll have your food ready. Shocked, Kate widened her eyes. Wow. My brother is amazing, she praised with a look of amazement. Roy didn't know why, but he had a light sense of pride. He shook his head and reminded himself, she is trouble. Soon their orders sat on the counter of the food truck. Kate took the turtle out of her school bag, grabbed a shrimp, and fed it to its mouth. She picked up the apple slices from the table and handed them to Exie. Exie held the apple slices in her mouth, followed Kate's arm to the table, and stood in a row with the turtles to eat the fruit. Kate then stretched out her little hand, ready to grab a chicken nugget. It's finally my turn to eat, she said happily. Roy frowned. Wait. Kate looked up suspiciously, only to see Roy pick up a disposable glove on the side, moved closer, and put it on her hand. The customers in the food court were all school students, and gloves were also suitable. Roy easily put the gloves on Kate. Thank you, Roy, Kate said crisply. At the same time, the aroma of the chicken nuggets made her mouth water. Roy was literally feeling embarrassed to see his sister behaving like this, as Kate watched her food with a watery mouth and desperate eyes. Roy recoiled as crystal saliva threatened to drip onto his face, a disgusted expression crossing his features. Don't thank me, just eat, he uttered in a repulsive tone. The young boy scowled as he grabbed a tissue to wipe Kate's mouth. It wasn't like he wanted to indulge her, but the embarrassment of witnessing his sister drooling at her age was overwhelming. How could he face the world? Kate began eating with a whimper. Roy couldn't recall how it happened, but he had become her waiter, meticulously preparing shrimp for her and peeling off the shells, barely taking a few bites himself. Amidst her meal, Kate mumbled, "Brother," this time. Interrupting her angrily, Roy interjected, Focus on your own food. Don't worry about me. Finish quickly. We have a class after this and an English class after the 4th period. Kate nodded, her mouth full, and mumbled in agreement. She thought, wait, doesn't he dislike the English class? Kate remembered how her other brother Alex enjoyed reading books and excelled in English lessons, while Roy had a fondness for peculiar numbers and could often be seen scribbling calculations in his notebook. While Kate ate with joy, the vanity ghost on the other side, without the restraint of Kate and Kazo, grew bolder and shamelessly more audacious with time. Sarah, sitting upright, felt as though a heavy burden weighed upon her back, draining her energy. Suddenly she sensed a kick against her chair from behind, and turned to see who was responsible for it. A concerned classmate who sat behind her whispered, "Sarah, are you okay? Did you not sleep well last night?" Sarah shook her head, but as she turned around, another classmate from the table behind kicked her chair again, slipping her a small note. Opening the note, Sarah read the poorly written but lengthy paragraph. "Sarah, I have something to tell you. Even though I might not be attractive, my feelings for you are genuine. You should know that you are the only one in my heart, and I will never like anyone else ever. Because I love you. If you have feelings for me too, sign on the bottom of my name." Ethan, a young boy seated in the last row of the second group, was the author of the note. As a middle school student, he had no concept of love. His note was innocent and naive, occasionally containing misspelled words. Sarah had no romantic feelings for Ethan, but she had never made her lack of interest clear to him. Just as she was about to respond with "pay attention to the class" on the note, the English teacher turned around. Panicking, she quickly covered the note with her hand. Suddenly, the vanity ghost on Sarah's neck whispered and tempted her. "What an honor to be liked by someone. Go on, hold up the note, and loudly announce that Ethan is confessing to you." Excitement sparked in Sarah's eyes. She raised her hand and proudly announced, "Teacher, Ethan passed me a note." Ethan, seated in the last row, dropped his pen in panic. "Passing notes again," the English teacher exclaimed, slamming her textbook onto the table. She had been so infuriated by Roy earlier in the class that she hadn't completely cooled down yet, so this was only like adding salt to her wounds. Sarah unfolded the note and read it aloud, word for word like a proud peacock flaunting its feathers. Laughter erupted throughout the classroom as everyone jeered and taunted Ethan. Another student, laughing hysterically, pinched his nose and mocked, "Because I love you, it's love, not just liking." The students joined in the laughter. The English teacher sneered and coldly remarked, "Ethan, go stand outside. Call your parents tomorrow. Falling in love at such a young age? I've seen many students like you, and they never turn out successful when they grow up. They either become scoundrels or failures." She unleashed all her pent-up frustration and anger on Ethan. Ethan's face turned pale. He shot Sarah a resentful look and left without saying a word. The echoes of laughter and mockery lingered in his ears, leaving an indelible mark on his heart. However, Sarah felt nothing at all. The act of hypocrisy only fed her vanity. It did not elicit any guilt. She felt no remorse for hurting Ethan. Amidst the laughter of her peers, Sarah experienced an indescribable satisfaction. A strange smile crept onto her lips. As the class bell signaled the end of the session, the teacher droned on for another 7 or 8 minutes, before finally leaving with the textbook and her uncomfortable shoes. The students immediately gathered around. One of them asked, "Hey Sarah, when did Ethan start liking you?" The other one said, "Ha ha, Ethan is so unattractive. He's a toad dreaming of a swan." The third one commented, "But hey, a lot of people like you, Sarah. Isn't your drawer filled with love letters?" Sarah modestly replied, "Oh, come on, it's nothing." She gestured for a female classmate to retrieve all the notes from her drawer. Most of them were small notes rather than actual love letters. Sarah's 2 followers read them all with delight. Outside in the corridor, the boys mercilessly teased Ethan. He hung his head, his expression filled with deep displeasure. Hudson, Sarah's classmate, leaned against Sarah's window, taunting and jeering. However, as the boys laughed, they suddenly noticed that Sarah had requested someone to bring out all the little notes. She was known for her pristine appearance, often in white attires. Her gentle voice and captivating demeanor made her the sweetheart of the class. Many young boys had developed a liking for her, resulting in a collection of small notes. The 2 boys who had just ridiculed Ethan abruptly ceased their laughter. Their expressions turned sour as they realized that Sarah was not as enchanting as they had previously thought. In fact, she seemed rather provocative. Sarah hypocritically declared, "All right, enough of this. There's no way I would be involved with any of them." One of her devoted followers chimed in, "Absolutely. We know that Sarah has a pretend marriage with the Miller family. In the future, she will be the one and only Mrs. Miller of the Miller family." Sarah did not deny it. She silently approved amidst the exclamations from the group. Her sense of vanity reached new heights. It was obvious that the vanity ghost lurking within her had also grown to an extreme size. Kazo, who had returned from his walk, witnessed this and exclaimed, "Hey, has the vanity ghost inflated? To what extent has it absorbed vanity and malevolence?" Kazo couldn't help but shake his head. Sarah was a child, and thus not as physically strong as an adult. Judging by the speed at which the vanity ghost was growing, she would perish within 2 days. When Sarah would die of the ghost's weight, at that moment the vanity ghost would take over her. From that point on, she would cease to exist and transform into a vanity ghost. The malevolent ghost that assumed control would evolve into something even more vicious, so it had to be captured before it fully overtook its host. Where did Kate go? Kazo drifted away looking for her. In the office, the homeroom teacher took a sip of water and casually inquired to the English teacher, "How was your class with Kate? Did everything run smoothly?" The English teacher took a sip of coffee and murmured softly, "Kate is a careful child who is under the school's jurisdiction. Though she does not fear authority, she wants to avoid being held accountable." The teacher asked again, "Is Kate well behaved?" The English teacher sneered and replied slowly, "What kind of discipline can a 9-year-old have?" At that moment, another teacher walked in and asked, "Hey, why can't I find Kate anywhere?" The homeroom teacher quickly went out to check and found out that Kate and Roy were indeed gone. She hurriedly returned to consult with the English teacher. The English teacher frowned. "How should I know? Who knows where she went to play after class? Young children are very playful. A school is a place for learning. This isn't a kindergarten where I should follow her around and take care of her." The principal, who heard this conversation, wore a frown on his face and warned the English teacher, "You really need to work on your temper. This child is different and needs special attention." When the class bell rang, the English teacher picked up the lesson plan and proclaimed, "In my eyes, all students are equal. There is no distinction between high and low. Everything is based on grades." With a proud expression, she walked away, leaving the other teachers speechless. What could she mean by claiming all students to be equal? To her, grades were everything, and she looked down upon children who scored below 90 in English. She treated them differently. "Sooner or later, I will give up looking for her as I cannot find her anywhere," said the teacher who was looking for Kate. The principal suggested, "All right, let's go and check if Kate has returned. I'll also look for her." In English, the highest score was 100, and half of the students she teaches had scored 96 or above in English. To the English teacher, only the children who score perfect marks on exams were considered top students. During the self-study sessions, she rushed to distribute and explain the papers. She even insisted on occupying half of every physical education class to do her English paper. Some parents have even complained about her aggressive teaching methods, but the complaints were unheard of. The school hasn't dealt properly with the English teacher. Here, the teacher walked through the hallway with a disdainful expression on her face. She knew that her English classes were so exceptional that she wouldn't be fired from her position despite the complaints. Kate ate until her stomach was full, and she patted it with satisfaction, saying, "I did it." Roy raised an eyebrow and asked, "Have you eaten enough? Don't follow me to school tomorrow." Kate replied righteously, "We are not here just to eat." Roy sneered and asked, "If it's not for eating, then why are you here? To attend classes? How old do you think are you? Do you actually believe what you are saying?" Surprisingly, Kate shook her head and said, "No, I am here to catch ghosts." At hearing this, Roy was shocked. Suddenly, he remembered the horrifying ghost he saw in the bathroom yesterday. To catch ghosts. What exactly do you mean by that? Roy asked, his eyelids twitching. Kate turned to him with suspicion and said, "Brother, are you scared?" Roy's face froze, but he bravely replied, "Who's afraid? I'm just asking, what exactly do you mean by catching ghosts?" Kate went closer to Roy and whispered, "I'm catching an evil spirit. The evil ghost is resting on Sarah's head and is sucking her spirit from her neck like it's drinking an iced latte. The little one's soft voice and the metaphor were spot on. As Roy listened, he couldn't help but think of other people drinking iced lattes. For some reason, he felt a gust of wind blowing and his neck felt cool. Subconsciously, he covered the back of his neck, unaware of the tension on his face. Can that evil spirit appear in the daytime as well? Roy asked. Kate nodded and said, yes, there are 3 types of ghosts in the world. She counted on her fingers, saying, those like Ugly Aunt are called wandering ghosts. They had died in abnormal ways and thus weren't able to reincarnate themselves, so they just float around the world. Roy's face turned pale as he recalled the terrifying female ghost that scared him the other night. Kate continued, then there are vengeful spirits. They are the kind of people who had died tragically. They appear suddenly and scare people away. Once again, Roy's face turned pale. The last type is the evil ghost. They are very fierce and can even devour people. Wandering ghosts and vengeful spirits can't appear during the day, but the evil ghost can. They are very powerful, Kate added. Roy was scared and he covered Kate's mouth and quickly said, okay, stop talking. No, Kate protested. Roy glanced around. The sun was shining in the sky and the flowers smiled at him. With such bright sunlight, there won't be any ghosts. He let go of Kate. Kate said quickly, brother, you're just scared. It's okay. Roy was angry. He didn't know the reason, but his once quiet little sister had become quite talkative. Kate wondered and said, why are you scared of ghosts? You shouldn't be. You are so powerful, you shouldn't be afraid. Ghosts aren't that scary. They're just like people. Well, except their eyeballs bulge out and their limbs might fall off. Unable to bear it any longer, Roy found candy and stuffed it into Kate's mouth. Finally, Kate fell silent. It was indeed good timing. That was when the homeroom teacher and the others noticed them. They saw Roy and Kate walking around the campus with their school bags on their backs, so they walked up to them and inquired, Kate, where have you been? The bell for the class has already rung. Kate sucked on the candy and mumbled, I was hungry, and my brother brought me something to eat. Roy snorted. We were kicked out by the English teacher. Now that he saw the principal, Roy wanted to call his father and ask him to pick them up from school. By looking at the school building in front of him, he remembered what Kate had said about a demon resting on Sarah's head. He didn't want to go inside. Upon learning that Roy wanted to contact Albert through his mobile phone, the principal and the other teacher exchanged glances and persuaded him, saying, Roy, take your sister inside first. Roy pursed his lips. Little did they know that Roy, the tech-savvy boy, was the most afraid of ghosts. Kate took Roy's arm and asked, being very obedient, Good teacher, do I and Roy have to go to class? Then she said to Roy, We should listen to what the teacher says. Also, Grandma always asks me to be a good child. Reluctantly, Roy followed along helplessly. If he didn't go up, wouldn't his sister laugh at him for being afraid of ghosts? If he had been bragging about not being afraid, he had to own it. Upon entering the classroom, Roy instinctively looked at Sarah. Seeing Sarah look up and meet his gaze, she grinned at him. Roy suddenly felt a wave of fear wash over him. With her eyes fixed on him, he could see that there was a dullness under Sarah's eyes and her face appeared gloomy. Such a smile was inexplicably eerie. When Sarah was pretending in front of him just a while ago, it wasn't like this. Roy quickly averted his gaze, straightened his back, and awkwardly made his way back to his seat, feeling as if his limbs were moving on their own. At that moment, the ghostly presence that lingered over Sarah's head whispered, Look, Roy is looking at you. You're the first person he looked at when he came back to the classroom. He must like you as well. Wow, everyone likes Sarah. Sarah rested her chin on her hand and stared at Roy intently, feeling a sense of pride within her. For an exceptional girl like her, it's no surprise that boys would be attracted to her. Kate returned to Sarah, tilted her head, and glanced at the ghostly presence. You're full too, she murmured. With such a large ghost, it should be able to fill the soul bottle a little more, shouldn't it? Sarah turned her head wearily, furrowing her brow, and asked, What do you mean by full? Sarah believed herself to be different from Kate. She attended school to study diligently, unlike Kate, who was always focused on food. At that moment, the head teacher entered the classroom and said, All right, students, let's begin the lesson. Today, we will be studying the poem, Country Residence. This poem is a bit longer than what we've learned before. Everyone, Learn it together with me, and let's see who can learn it the fastest. Sarah immediately raised her hand and said, Teacher, I've already memorized this poem long ago. The overseeing teacher paused, casting a glance at Sarah, who appeared sleep-deprived with dark circles under her eyes. The teacher attributed it to Sarah's mother's immaturity, assuming she might have kept Sarah up late with her childlike behavior. Not wanting to disrupt Sarah's recitation, the teacher suggested, Let's have Sarah recite the poem, and everyone can follow along in their books to check for accuracy. With her hands behind her back, Sarah confidently began reciting Country Residence by Johanna Burns. The grass grows and the eagle flies to the February sky. Her recitation was flawless, delivering the words with the right emphasis and emotional depth, as if she were performing on a stage. The students marveled, exclaiming, That's amazing! Even the head teacher nodded in approval and commended, Very good, Sarah. Sarah, upon returning to her seat, felt taken aback. Why did the teacher only praise her with 3 words? She had recited the poem so well. She expected the teacher to ask about her studies outside of class and acknowledge her hard work. With this, she felt a twinge of dissatisfaction. Simultaneously, the vanity ghost beside Sarah also felt dissatisfied. It raised its head, creating a small gap between itself and Sarah. Kate, observing this, widened her eyes, realizing the number of straws between Sarah and the evil spirit. Kazo happened to float by, witnessing Sarah's and the vanity ghost's discontent. Recalling his earlier investigation of the school, he narrowed his eyes and instructed Kate, Tell the teacher that you can also recite the poem. Eagerly, Kate raised her hand and announced, Teacher, I can do it too. The homeroom teacher was momentarily stunned and asked, So, Kate, will you recite it as well? Standing up with her head held high, Kate confidently recited, The grass grows, and the eagle flies to the February sky, and the willows are intoxicated with the spring haze. The children return early from school and take advantage of the east wind to fly paper kites. Although Kate's pronunciation wasn't entirely accurate, her baby voice made her recitation even more endearing than Sarah's. The class couldn't help but admire her cuteness and found her recitation very impressive. The head teacher's heart melted, and she praised Kate with delight. Kate, that was wonderful. Have you memorized the entire poem? Have you been studying so diligently? Kate glanced sideways and replied, No, I just learned it. She simply followed the teachings of her master. But after reading the poem once, Kate effortlessly committed it to memory, unbeknownst to anyone. The head teacher praised her again, saying, That's very impressive. Keep up the good work. Assuming that Roy had taught Kate during their shared mealtime, the head teacher didn't think much of it. As the class continued, Sarah found it increasingly challenging to focus. Her eyes filled with disbelief and doubt. She thought, How could Kate receive so much praise when her recitation was superior? I have spent half the night memorizing the poem, and yet Kate claimed to have learned it effortlessly. Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that Kate was lying. Deeply unsettled, a tinge of jealousy flickered in her eyes, and a single thought consumed her mind. Kill Kate. She's the daughter of the Crook family. Uncontrollably, Sarah extended her hand and pushed with force, unintentionally colliding with Kate's chair, creating a loud bang. The class teacher turned around and inquired, What happened? Startled, Sarah quickly sat up straight, although her movements were sluggish, and she appeared exhausted. It's nothing, teacher. It's nothing, she replied, lips pursed. The homeroom teacher found Sarah's slumped appearance peculiar, but she let the matter go for the time being. The vanity ghost rolled its eyes in frustration, knowing that Kazo blamed it for this as well. Hey, it wasn't me. She did it on her own, the vanity ghost exclaimed, its large and heavy body moving slightly away from Sarah, yet reluctant to leave her neck. The vanity ghost recognized the rarity of finding a small child as vain, hypocritical, and fitting to its nature as Sarah. In a few days it could replace Sarah and gain the power to live once again. When that happens, Sarah's body would be its own, and no one would be able to stop it. Kate, lowering her voice, asked Kazo, Master, is it too fat to be filled? Kazo shook his head. No, he replied. Kate sighed. It's just inflating in vain. So useless. Upon hearing this, the vanity ghost was perplexed and wondered about Kate's remark. Kazo leaned against the wall, his eyes holding an ambiguous expression as he inquired of the evil spirit, Are you a teacher at this school? The vanity ghost's face slightly changed, gripping Sarah's body even tighter. Keizo then took out a booklet, casually flipping through its pages. Becoming a ghost has stringent requirements. Listen carefully, Kate. He started explaining to Kate. First and foremost, an evil spirit emerges when a person's life meets a tragic end. This tragic death is no ordinary one. Falling off a building and breaking one's limbs or being run over by a car doesn't count as a tragic death. The death that creates an evil spirit should be even more tragic. He continued, secondly, after death, you're bound by fate and cannot leave the place of death. You're condemned to repeat the process of dying in the same place in the same way, accumulating resentment, malice, and evil over time until you turn into an evil ghost. Kazo closed the booklet and asked the evil ghost, I'm curious, how did you die? Kate tilted her head, pondering the nature of the evil ghost's death. She asked, how could someone who is dead be so inflated, like a big balloon? The vanity ghost contorted its face, wanting nothing to do with Kazo. It couldn't determine what kind of ghost Kazo was, but it sensed a chilling aura emanating from him. However, as the most vicious ghost among all ghosts, it felt no fear. As for Kate, the vanity ghost remained wary but didn't take her seriously. Finally, the class came to an end, but Sarah's dark circles became more pronounced. She glared at Kate, gritting her teeth, and whispered, Kate, you did that on purpose, didn't you? You deliberately moved out of the way when I pushed you, making me look like a fool, and you intentionally stole my spotlight. I recited the poem so much better than you. Sarah seethed with anger, while Kate appeared surprised and asked, on purpose? What do you mean? Sarah angrily retorted, you deliberately stole my spotlight. The students around turned their heads in surprise, astonished by Sarah's outburst. Realizing she had blurted out her true feelings, Sarah hurriedly packed her school bag, gritting her teeth. Didn't you say we'd meet outside? She taunted Kate. Anyone who doesn't show up is a loser. With her school bag slung over her shoulder, Sarah left the classroom in a huff. Kate swiftly stashed the turtle and her parrot back into her school bag, preparing to make her escape. However, Roy grabbed her hand and asked, where are you going? Kate replied, brother, let's go catch ghosts. As she spoke, she dragged Roy along and they dashed out of the classroom, while Roy kept pleading, wait, what? He didn't want to catch ghosts, or have anything to do with it. Catching ghosts for Roy was an impossible task, no matter what he had at stake. He couldn't do it, even if someone gave him all the math problems in the world in return, even if Einstein himself stood before him and asked him to, even if mathematicians and scholars solved the problems for him, it would still be impossible. Kate exerted her strength, pulling Roy along as they sprinted through the grove. The scorching sun loomed overhead, casting its rays through the canopy of trees, providing some relief from the oppressive heat. As they entered the grove, Roy's attention was drawn to Sarah, standing with her head bowed, slightly hunched, and her hands at her sides. Upon noticing Roy's approach, Sarah slowly lifted her head and watched him with a fixed, haunting gaze. A shiver ran down Roy's spine, causing his entire body to tense up in response. Sensing his fear, Kate turned around and said, brother, are you scared? Maybe you should go back. Roy, who had been retreating, hesitated and stopped in his tracks, summoning every bit of his courage. He declared, scared? Me? Just kidding. He tried to convince himself that nothing in the world could frighten him. However, at that very moment, a piercing scream erupted from an unknown source, filling the air with a loud, sharp, and spine-chilling sound. Roy immediately leaped into the air in fear. Startled, Kate grabbed hold of Roy, who by now was attempting to flee, and said, brother, it's just Exie. She pointed out that the high-pitched singing from Exie, coming from her school bag, sounded like a scream. Exie's voice. The high-pitched, irritating voice resembled a scream. Upon realizing this, Roy was left speechless. He felt like crying. At that moment, Sarah approached them with delicate steps. Her movements seemed as if she was tiptoeing. Roy, you're here too, Sarah chuckled. Roy was still shaking from fear, but suppressing his fear and holding back tears, he observed Sarah's pale face, sunken eyes, and dark circles. Her frozen expression and forced smile sent chills down his spine. Roy mustered his courage and questioned Sarah. You? Kate stepped forward, positioning herself in front of Roy, her brows furrowing. She stated firmly, if you have something to say it to me. Don't scare my brother. Despite her childish and gentle appearance, Kate's serious expression gave her an air of determination. The vanity ghost, who had been observing the scene, couldn't help but sneer at Kate's words. It wasn't scared of Kate, it was only worried about Kazo. Asserting control over Sarah's body, the vanity ghost inquired Kazo, "What exactly do you plan to do?" Kazo leaned against a tree casually, responding, "Nothing much, just taking my apprentice out for some practice." "Oh, and we need to handle the matter of the 18 individuals crushed under the playground," he added. Suddenly the vanity ghost's expression changed, revealing fangs as it viciously lunged toward Kazo. It threatened, "Don't meddle in my affairs. It's all in the past and everyone's a ghost." Kate swiftly grabbed the vanity ghost by the ankle and flung it backward with a resounding thud. Her serious expression remained intact as she asserted, "Everyone might be a ghost, but Master is not an evil ghost." Kazo observed the protective action of his young apprentice, a hint of stubbornness and pride glinting in her eyes. He ordered, "Kate, throw it away." Kate nodded obediently, but before proceeding felt she couldn't move her hands. She turned around to find that Roy was holding her. She said to him, "Let go of my arm." Roy, who after witnessing his sister fight ghosts was still in a state of shock, complied and struggled to steady his trembling legs by gripping onto a nearby tree. As Kate tossed the vanity ghost aside, a deafening crash ensued, and a gigantic female ghost with an enormous sumo wrestler-like physique materialized before them. At that moment, Kate released Roy's hand, causing his legs to quiver as he grasped onto a nearby tree for support. Looking up, Roy saw a young man in a white robe leaning against a tree, his complexion pallid, and his lips stained crimson. Strangely, the man appeared to be lacking feet. The man suddenly turned his head and gasped, "Can you see me?" Roy attempted to ask, but Kazo swiftly intervened, flicking his finger to silence him with an invisible yellow talisman. "Stay quiet and observe." Meanwhile, the vanity ghost, having recovered from being thrown by Kate, stared at her in disbelief. Had she just been thrown by a 9-year-old? The vanity ghost glared at Kate and sarcastically taunted, "What in the world are you?" Taking offense, Kate corrected her with utmost sincerity, "I am a person, not a thing." Realizing the lack of coherence in her words, little Kate narrowed her eyes and glared at the vanity ghost, puffing up her cheeks. The vanity ghost sneered, "Oh, is the little thing angry?" Kate's indignation reached its peak. "No, you're the thing. Your whole family is a bunch of things." Without warning, Kate seized the vanity ghost by the feet and flung her aside like a discarded sack. Vanity ghost was left speechless because she never expected Kate to reach her from that position. Fury burned within Kate, an unusual fire coursing through her veins. The vanity ghost, thrown away with force, teetered on the edge of unconsciousness. It was as if Kate had dismissed her with no more than a casual flick. "You," was all the vanity ghost managed to utter as a resounding crash interrupted her words. Kate, treating the vanity ghost as if she were a sandbag, hurled her with great strength, obliterating her form into shattered pieces. The vanity ghost, unable to retaliate, stared dumbfounded at the fierce little girl who possessed so much power. "Wait!" the vanity ghost pleaded to Kate desperately. Kate retorted, "Why should I wait? Are you going to fight back?" Impatience filled the vanity ghost's voice as she exclaimed, "I'm using Sarah as a shield. Aren't you afraid of harming your little friend?" Driven by fear, the vanity ghost's only hope was to use Sarah as protection. Kate shook her little head, her determination unwavering. "She's not my little friend. If Sarah is hurt, so be it. It would be better than being drained and getting killed by a ghost, wouldn't it?" The vanity ghost fell silent for a moment, gritting her teeth as she glanced at Kazo and Kate. Finally, she made a decision and attempted to flee. But as she tried to escape, the red string on Kate's wrist emitted a faint red glow, restraining the vanity ghost from fleeing the scene and pulling her back towards Kate. With all her might, Kate struggled and tugged, playing a dangerous game of tug-of-war. Sarah, being the host body for the vanity ghost, suffered from the back-and-forth motion. Had Kate mistakenly grabbed Sarah's foot instead of the ghost's, the tremendous force would have shattered her fragile form. But Sarah was far from being unscathed. Her face had swollen so much from the falls that it resembled that of a pig's head. Suddenly, with a deafening crash, dust filled the air. With that, Kate was finally successful in expelling the vanity ghost from Sarah's body. Sarah's eyes rolled back, and she collapsed unconscious onto the ground. Kate let out a sigh of relief, wiping the sweat from her forehead with her tiny hand. She turned to Keizo and asked in a weary voice, "It's finally over, Master." With such an exhausting ordeal, catching the vanity ghost took a toll on Kate. Kate looked at Keizo and said sarcastically, "You are completely unreliable. I learned this technique from you, but it is far too demanding." Both Keizo and Roy stood there, stunned and speechless. Roy, wearing an expression of bewilderment and shock, muttered, "It's too powerful." But he knew that sister was no crybaby, and that she was a fierce little girl who could stand up to anyone. Kazo hadn't anticipated that Kate possessed supernatural abilities, and that she had the power to deal with ghosts by forcefully expelling them out of host bodies. It was an incredible notion. Even for him, separating an evil spirit from its host required considerable effort. Yet this little girl had achieved it only through sheer physical force. While the red string played a role, it played more of a supporting act. Kate's strength might not have been apparent when dealing with the living, but when it came to ghosts, it couldn't be equaled. It was as if she was born for this. Suppressing the shock within him, Kazo spoke up. "Do you still remember the ghost-repelling spell that I taught you?" Kate nodded, her voice filled with determination. "Yes, I do remember. Even though your drawings looked like they were chewed on by dogs, I remember them." Keizo twitched his mouth slightly, finding her additional comment unnecessary. Simply stating that she remembered would have sufficed. Kate waved her fingers and clumsily drew the lines of the ghost-repelling spell. A yellow rune materialized in the air, enveloping the vanity ghost and drawing her towards the soul gourd. "No, don't put me in there, I don't want to go in." The vanity ghost screamed and struggled. "Why did I put so much effort only to end up like this?" she exclaimed. Kate paid no heed to her words and exerted all her strength to pull the vanity ghost into the soul gourd. The yellow rune emitted a brilliant light, forming a vast net that ensnared the vanity ghost, gradually shrinking its hold. The vanity ghost fought back desperately, but the golden net tightened its grip. Kate found herself compelled to step on the ghost and pull with all her might. Kazo sighed, rubbing his forehead helplessly. "Silly apprentice," he muttered to himself. "Now, Kate, ask her how she died," Keizo instructed. Dealing with ghosts wasn't just about capturing them, it also involved gathering information so it can be put to use later. Learning how the evil spirit had met its demise would enhance Kate's knowledge and experience for the future. Kate dutifully obeyed, her voice filled with childlike innocence. "Fat lady, how did you die?" The vanity ghost, her eyes burning with anger, sneered at Kate. "You're fat, your whole family is fat." Kate immediately retorted, "Rebound!" The vanity ghost fell silent. Kazo and Roy exchanged glances, both equally taken aback. The vanity ghost grew increasingly agitated, screaming and struggling in a futile attempt to break free. Kazo wondered if the vanity ghost would reveal the details of her death at all. With a flick of his finger, he pulled the vanity ghost back into the soul gourd. The gourd swayed, and faintly the cries of the vanity ghost could be heard. "Let me out." Kate patted the soul gourd and cheerfully said, "Fat lady, please stay quiet inside with the ugly lady." Kate shook the gourd with excitement. She wondered if, with the arrival of the fat lady ghost and the presence of the ugly ant ghost, her gourd was nearly full or not. Eagerly Kate turned to Kazo and asked, her voice brimming with anticipation, "Master, is my gourd almost full?" The ghost was so fat. Keizo touched the small bump on his head and replied, "Master will teach you how to check." He took one of Kate's fingers, pressed it against the gourd's surface and whispered, "Focus." Kate concentrated, and suddenly, it was as if she could peer into the gourd. The space inside seemed vast, akin to a spacious room. The ugly lady lay within, looking bored. The fat lady stamped her feet, still uttering angry curses. Witnessing the enormity of the monster she had just captured, it was hard to fathom how it could fit in there, like a gap between teeth. As Kate snapped back to reality, she realized that the gourd on her fingertip remained the size of a fingernail, trembling gently before her. The little girl lamented, "When will this be filled?" Keizo pursed his lips, jokingly remarking, "I don't know. Why don't you ask your brother to calculate it for you?" The master and apprentice turned to Roy, who stood nearby. Roy protested with a hint of nervousness. "Don't ask me. He would never undertake such a task, even if forced. He would rather abandon his beloved math, physics, and chemistry, and focus solely on the challenging and shallow humanities subjects. Why not? Brother, aren't you good at counting? Kate exclaimed. No, I'm not very good at it, Roy replied. Undeterred, Kate sat down and began sketching on the ground, explaining, Brother, look, this is the gourd room, this is the ugly lady, and this is the fat lady. The room is so big, the fat lady is so big, and the ugly lady is also so big. Can you tell me how many ghosts we need to fill it? Or how many fat ladies and ugly ladies can fill the gourd room? Roy was caught off guard and replied, No, I don't want to count. However, Roy's hand seemed to have a mind of its own. Whenever confronted with anything related to arithmetic, he couldn't help but embark on mathematical calculations. Grabbing a stick, he wrote and drew on the ground. The volume of the fat ghost is equal to x plus y. In this room, the area is equal to z. So, to fill the gourd, x is approximately 19, and y is approximately 100. He continued with excitement. So you need about 19 fat ladies and approximately 100 ugly ladies. Kate nodded earnestly. Yeah, I got it. Keizo sighed to himself, wondering if he had not mentioned that earlier. After Roy finished his calculations, he nonchalantly tossed the stick away, pretending as though he had never engaged in any arithmetic. He averted his gaze and inquired, Why do you have to fill the gourd? Kate, hugging her knees, rested her little head on them and replied, Because the master said if the gourd isn't filled, they'll take me away. Roy paused for a moment and asked, Take you away? Where would they take you? Kate lowered her head, tracing patterns on the ground with a stick as she murmured, Go far away and never return. Roy remained silent, contemplating the implications of Kate's words. If the soul gourd isn't adequately filled, would it result in her death? He wondered. After a prolonged silence, Roy finally spoke up. Were there other spirits similar to the corpulent lady we encountered earlier? Their capture was imperative if such entities existed. Of course, it wasn't because Kate had mentioned the possibility of her demise if the soul gourd remained unfilled. No, it was solely because he needed to verify the accuracy of his calculations regarding X and Y. Yes, that was the reason. Roy tried to justify himself. Abruptly, Keizo approached Roy and inquired, By the way, how can you see me? Taken aback, Roy began to respond, but he noticed the white-robed figure gradually fading and disappearing before his eyes. He stood in astonishment, glancing around and whispering, Kate, has your master vanished too? Kate glanced beside her and replied, No, master is right beside you. Roy felt a shiver down his spine as if a hand had touched his neck, causing his hair to stand on end. He dared not turn his head. Sometimes it was scarier not to see than to see. Kate spoke again. Brother, master asked if you've encountered any unclean entities before. Roy, with a rigid posture, replied, No. Kazo stroked his chin, his brows furrowing, and thought, This is very peculiar. How could you suddenly see them and then not see them at all? It's so strange. Having been a ghost for hundreds of years, Keizo had never witnessed such a phenomenon as Roy has experienced. Such a thing has never happened, unless external factors had interfered, like applying cow's tears to the eyelids, or occult priests momentarily opening the eyes of heaven with symbols. But Roy had done no such thing, and yet he had started seeing them all of a sudden. Either he possessed an innate ability to perceive spirits, or he couldn't see them at all. Peculiar indeed, Kazo said himself as flipped through the book. When confronted with uncertainty, he never panicked, instead sought answers within the pages of his book. At that moment, a commotion from outside the grove reached their ears.